Hey, how we doing today, guys? Making sure everything's good. Yeah. Oh. So, YouTube literally 3 hours ago agreed to monetize my channel. I did it, guys. I did it for real. I did it for real. And I'm not gonna lie, I am completely depleted. Like, I'm completely depleted. But you can see down here, look, there's a new little button. Look at it. All right? Show your support for the Canadian economy. You can click on that. Hey, Major, how you doing, bud? And these last 2 days, I've just been like biting my nails. I even made a video where I was like, is it gonna happen? Because they told me it could take about a month. Literally took 2 days. And so it's sky's the limit now, right? Ads are going to start showing up on some of my stuff. I don't know what it means exactly in regards to like how much am I going to get and all that, but because I think a lot of it is just based on viewership and who clicks on what and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, at this point, anything counts. Anything counts. And I was so concerned. I was so concerned that it wasn't gonna happen. I was like so concerned about it. I was like staying up all night and like fretting. But it happened, guys. It fucking happened. Yeah, so I'm the coolest. And I guess it's just keep on keeping on, right? Keep on keeping on. Let's take a look at what options I have available and all that. Hey, Mock, how you doing? What was my idea for a Superman story? My idea for a Superman story, it's as clean as it can get. I've even started writing it. Well, look at you, pissed off Canadian. First in the door, $1.49, and a banana no less. Absolutely incredible, bud. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I really do. Oh, man. That feels good. That feels good. That feels real good. Just to know that that function exists feels really cool. You know? Rather than it being like this Patreon thing where you have to go off onto another site and all this kind of stuff, people can just click that button and just like, boop, and in it comes. There you go. I'm $1.49 richer already. Look at that. So my Superman story idea, I am blown away. It is staggering to me that people like that the storytellers, DC, is struggling with a Superman story. Don't even worry about it, pissed off, but I appreciate the gesture more than anything. Because to me, the Superman story, it's so obvious. Like, it's so obvious. Yeah, YouTube takes its cut. For sure it does. That's how it makes its money, right? So, the story begins with Superman saving Metropolis from Brainiac. As Brainiac does what Brainiac does, which is he's captured Metropolis inside of a jar, right? And he's going to destroy the solar system and harvest its sun. This is Brainiac's MO. This is what he does all the time. Superman stops him with like and this is all just like the intro, if you ask me. Like I which I think is brilliantly laid out. I've like got the script written so that there's this great, like it starts on the Daily Planet and it zooms out, and as you zoom out more and more, you begin to realize like you get the full effect of the city. But then instead of it zooming out onto the planet, it's like the jar, and then you hear Brainiac laughing, right? And it zooms out into space, and then the solar system and the whole thing. Anyway, Superman shows up, stops him, banishes him to the Phantom Zone, as one does in the Superman universe. And then when they return Metropolis, they have like a little celebratory moment. He and Batman share like a little moment, just a nod in the direction of their rivalry. And then an asteroid hits the Earth, and it's Doomsday. Right? It's like a who's who. Like you got to get everybody in the story, right? Like, and if you're gonna tell like a really good Superman story for like the fans and for everybody, you got to include figures like Brainiac, Doomsday, right? So Doomsday shows up. They have a big fucking fight. Superman throws him into space, like takes him up into space, throws Doomsday into space, and then passes out. And the moon comes and like captures or like runs into Superman as he's like passed out, and he ends up on the dark side of the moon. Right? We all know that Superman is powered by solar energy, and so he's passed out on the dark side of the moon, and nobody knows where he's gone. Right? So we've lost track of Superman. He is then recovered by Chinese scientists who are on the moon. They have a moon base, right? He goes back down to Earth. 40 years has passed, right? 40 years has passed since Superman has passed out. This is perfect from the storytelling position because in 40 years, so 40 years is what it took for the neoliberal period to get us here. And so essentially you have a fish out of water story where Superman plops in at the end of the neoliberal period. And who has taken over? Lex Luthor, of course, right? And what is Lex Luthor doing? Lex Luthor is harvesting power from the core of the Earth in order to send it interdimensionally to Darkseid. Darkseid being the fundamental villain of the piece. It takes Superman a little while to suss this out, of course, because like he knows Luthor's up to no good. What's Luthor's plan? Turns out, and Luthor's position is very much like, what was I supposed to do, right? Darkseid came and he was going to destroy us, and so I did this in order to save us, right? But of course, Superman's going to go defeat Darkseid and then come back, and Lex Luthor is going to say to him, hey, everything that I've done here and the power structure that exists and all this kind of stuff, it's all legal, right? The people vote for it. Right, I am here in this position, and it's all completely legally done. If you depose me, then you're a tyrant and a dictator, right? And so Superman attempts to overthrow Luthor's reign through the system that he claims is legitimate, only to realize that he's bought that system. That system is owned by him, and so he rallies the people to revolt against Lex Luthor, and they overthrow his government, basically, and then reinstitute democracy. And then you can literally stand up and be like, wave the American flag, Americana, America stands for democracy, all that kind of stuff, and do all the patriotism and all this, and then credits roll, that's the end of your movie. Like, it seems obvious to me. The moment I heard, we're really struggling to make a Superman movie, I'm like, really? Why? Superman's as straightforward as it gets, man. Like, if you can't tell a Superman story, then you don't know how to tell stories, period. Like, you're out of the business. Get the fuck out of the business. Yeah, because it's so fucking straightforward. It's such an easy story, right? Like, oh yeah, and of course, like, who is in the middle of all of that story is Brainiac, of course. Like, Brainiac's part of the story as it goes forward, right? Brainiac is the one who's giving Lex Luthor the technology advice in order to build the devices for Darkseid, right? And but in any case, like, it's as straightforward as it gets, right? Superman disappears. He shows up at the end of the neoliberal period. Lex Luthor has taken over. He's working for Darkseid with the help of Brainiac. Superman goes, kicks the shit out of Darkseid, the way he does every single fucking time. Comes back, and then overthrows Lex Luthor. Superman. Right? Truth, justice, American way, democracy. Like, the reason why we can't tell a good Superman story, and the reason why they're really struggling to tell a good Superman story, is because concepts like truth and justice and the American way and democracy and all of these things, they don't exist anymore for these people, right? They don't know how to tell that story. That's why we're getting really good stories about, like, Superman corrupted, right? Like The Boys, for example. Like, The Boys is a phenomenal Superman story if Superman was a neoliberal, right? Like, what's his name? Homecomer or home something? He is Superman. Like literally. There's no difference between him and Superman in terms of his power set. The only difference is that he is a neoliberal, whereas Superman is not, right? Like, Superman believes in the ideals and maybe is a naive character for it, but that's always been who he is, right? He's always been this kind of naive character that believes in an objective truth, an objective, the objective idea that there can be justice, right? That the American way of life is the greatest American way of life, and that democracy is the most powerful force in the universe, right? Like these are like truisms to who Superman is, and it's extremely telling that we can't tell a good Superman story because not only are our storytellers so disconnected from basic moral values, like it's the reason why we can't tell good Star Trek stories. Like Star Trek is essentially a dead IP because to have a good Star Trek story, you need to take a strong position, a strong moral position, and defend that moral position. And our storytellers don't do that anymore. We don't know how to do that as storytellers. And especially as like Disney buys up everything, right? And becomes this incredibly incestuous, like politically, like they have a morality, like they have an ideology, but it's so incestuous and so based on conformity that you can't really debate it, right? They're not going, like Disney is never going to take its own ideology and actually use it and clearly state it in order to defend it, right? Like they're never actually going to do that. And because they're refusing to do that with their own ideology, like they're never going to do that in like Star Trek. Which if you go back and you actually watch like Star Trek: The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, they were doing that all the time, right? Taking strong positions, taking strong moral positions for good or bad, and defending them, right? Like that's what made Star Trek so popular, and that's what makes a character like Superman so popular, is that Superman stands for like truth, justice, the American way, right? Like the goodness of America, democracy, all these things. And our storytellers just don't know what those things are, nor do they care to know, because conformity is what matters these days. And what's so ironic is that Superman used to essentially be hey guys, how you doing? Nova Scotia, Rusty, how you doing? Nova Scotia used to be, Superman used to be basically American propaganda, right? Like, straight up, just like the golden boy, right? What could do no wrong. But it really shows you that like how deep the decline in America is, that you can no longer show a character like Superman and have him be taken seriously. That's the other flip side of the problem, is that the populace doesn't believe in Superman anymore either, right? If you actually told this story, even this story that I'm suggesting, which is a fairly straightforward, like, come in, save the day Superman story, I don't know that the populace would necessarily go for it, because the populace is so cynical, is so unwilling to accept the idea that there could possibly be a hero that does something for ideals, right? Like, the Marvel movies, like, those things are trash. And they're trash for a very specific reason, which is that there's no ideological conversation that occurs whatsoever. Like, the Marvel character's story is one of survival exclusively, right? Their stakes are just their survival, right? Which means the story sucks. Like, sorry, it does. Like, if your story literally is we've got to fight or die, it's not really an interesting story, right? Like, the stakes are like as high as they can get, sure, for those characters. They live or whatever, but they don't grow or learn or anything. There's no change. There's no arc. Like, what's Tony Stark's arc? He's a weapons dealer who fights aliens and then kills himself so that everybody else can live, right? Like, and that makes him good. So that's his arc. And it's like he didn't really grow or learn anything or figure anything out, right? He didn't really confront any internal demons or anything. Not really. Like, so the Marvel movies are basically just like, we've got to fight this existential threat. Like, and so there's no ideological position. There's no strong moral statements, right? Which makes sense given how shitty the Marvel movies are. Like, if all you, like, the reason why there's so much brain rot around this Ukrainian crisis right now is because all we've ever, like, fed our kids is this Marvel garbage. So they have, like, no understanding of what's going on in the world. They have no political background. They've got no understanding of what anything is outside of these, like, cartoonish versions of, like, terrorists or whatever. And, like, straight up, like, we're worshiping like arms dealers. Like, straight up. So many movies these days have like 10% of the plot. The rest is some kind of music video to help sell the pop and soundtrack. I think they pay more to the song copyrights than the artist and crew. I mean, it's all just spectacle, right? Like, that's all. Is that they're really taking advantage. Like, one of the things that I think is actually a positive about all of these Marvel movies is that they, from a visual standpoint, they really are showing like what is possible and what is capable. Like, we're just starting to figure out what that medium and what the medium of film can actually achieve, which really tells you like there's lots of room to grow, right? We haven't even begun to express, and which isn't to say there aren't some films that have tried to do this. But we really haven't even begun to explore and express anything about our base humanity. We're essentially just using it for cartoons. Like, it's just basically bullshit, right? Distractionary nonsense. We're not using any of this technology and special effects and computer graphics or anything to actually like meaningfully explore the human experience or the universe in interesting ways. We're not taking strong moral positions and defending them. We're not attempting to articulate different modes of understanding the world. We're not even really that interested in showing the side of another species or civilization, right? Like, we're really, really stuck in like, we're good because we're good, and we say we're good, so we're good. And it's just like, we've got so much more room to grow, and we've got so much more that we can achieve and that we can do with this medium and with this technology, and we're really just using it for like, thanks Matthias. And I even got monetized. I went through the monetization thing. You guys can see there's the fun little button down here. Somebody's already donated $1.50 today, which was lovely. Thank you so much. And I'm depleted, guys. I'm like completely exhausted. I literally spent the whole weekend just like not sleeping, being very concerned that it wasn't going to happen. We did a huge oopsie, but we meant well. Yes, exactly, Ligandes. Like, isn't that one of the things is that our atrocities are just clumsy accidents, right? Like, when we commit moral abhorrences, when we do things that are as bad as the Nazis ever did, oopsie dee, right? Like, oh, we're just a big oaf. Oh, look at the dumbness that we did. Oh, what a dumb little mistake that we did. Hoopsie doopsie. Somebody does like 1/10 of the same thing, and it's they're Hitler. They're the Nazis again, right? Well, we literally fund Nazis. Hey, Islam, how you doing? Good to see you. Turkey, NATO wants to be a mediator between Ukraine and Russia to establish a ceasefire while occupying northern Cyprus, southern Syria, and regularly bombing Kurds. Yeah, I mean, Turkey actually is fairly well placed to be the mediator between Ukraine and Russia, because while Turkey is a NATO country, their relations with Russia are actually pretty decent. And I genuinely do think that Turkey does kind of view itself as if not neutral, certainly rooting for both, right? Like, I think that Turkey's offer to be a mediator is honest. I don't think it's necessary, though. Like, the negotiations have already been happening in Belarus this whole time, and and now you've got reports coming out. I don't have this at my fingertips, but I definitely saw it. You've got reports of Putin saying that he wants to meet with Zelensky directly. And when you've got that kind of thing happening where like Zelensky and Putin are actually going to meet, like, that's something significant is going to happen. And so like, we are getting to the point now. Hold on, I've got some stuff here. Yeah, here we go. I've got actually 2 maps this time from 2 separate sources, and they both confirm, I think, what is actually going on. And like let's use this map. That's fine. This blue blob down here, as you can see, the old strategy from the Russians, I think, was to surround. But now I think they're pretty confident that they can just take this on straightforward, right? And they're having success moving in. You've got reports coming out. Somebody asked about Scott Ritter. Eric, how you doing, Eric? I don't think I said hello, but Scott Ritter's on the money, dude. Like, Scott Ritter knows what's up. Like he's not pulling any fucking punches at all. When I go take a break today, we'll have a listen to Scott Ritter, and I think that the Russians are pretty happy. Like, you see how there's like red area, and then there's like these red streaks. Well, these red streaks are like a zone of influence where like the Russians feel pretty confident that this is suppressive, right? Like you can't just like drive trucks through this region successfully, you know? So while the Russians haven't occupied this territory to the degree that they're happy to say that we occupy it completely, you're not able to get reinforcements in here, which I think is crucial. And we're seeing reports come out from Patrick Lancaster. Patrick Lancaster has been on the ground in Ukraine this whole time. Did I close that? Yeah, there we go. I don't want to play this because there's some grisly stuff, lots of trigger warnings in this, so I'm not going to play this video. But he walks around. He walks around saying, "Here, you know what? I will share it in the chat for those of you who do want to take a look at it." He's basically walking around the city of Donetsk, which the city of Donetsk is right here, right? Like, the city of Donetsk is essentially the front line, right? It's a civilian city, right? There isn't a military presence there, not officially. I'm sure there's Russian troops. I'm sure that there's the Donbass militia who have been fighting against these Nazis the whole time. But there was recent Patrick Lancaster reports on a shelling that occurred in this region. He shows some of the vehicles that were shelled, and they are shelling civilian targets. Like, there's no doubt about it. For all of the like complaining that like, oh, Moscow knocked out a hospital, it's like, yeah, the Nazis are literally putting like artillery in hospitals and schools specifically so that you can turn around and ignore that and just be like, Russia bombed a hospital, and like that's the whole story, as if they're not putting like heavy ordnance in these areas specifically for that reason. And here you have a situation where like they're literally doing the same thing, except there's no heavy ordnance there. They're just shelling civilians, and no reporting whatsoever. Nobody gives a shit about that whatsoever. So it looks to me like what Putin is doing here, and I think it's quite wise actually, is that he has decided, and I think his military personnel and his troops have decided, that they can take this territory without aerial bombardment. And that's actually a big deal. Being able to actually get into this region without aerial bombardment spares Russia a great deal of propaganda and backlash. Like, aerial bombardment is where the military, or where the propaganda machine is going to start losing its fucking mind, right? That's why they're making such heyday about this no-fly zone stuff, right? And really talking about like implementation of a no-fly zone, who's in for it, who's not, right? All this kind of stuff, because they know that Putin could just start fucking bombarding this place. He still could, right? Like, the only thing that's stopping Putin from doing it is his own patience and the resilience of the military, right? Oh yeah, and like there are very credible reports coming out saying that like mercenary groups came into this region, and as they were coming in, the Russians just fucking destroyed them. Like, straight up, like, the mercenaries started to come in, and Russia was just like, get the fuck out of here, and that's basically the long and short of it. And as we know about mercenary groups, right? Mercenary groups are not to be trusted. You can't rely on mercenaries. Like, you really can't. And the moment these mercenary groups experienced any kind of serious fire, they all fled, right? Which I knew they were going to. Like, these mercenaries that were moving into this region are used to fighting unarmed civilians. Or civilians with, like, small ordnance, you know, like rifles and shit, right? The Russians have tanks. The Russians have fucking Javelin missiles and shit with air support and all this kind of crazy shit. Like, these mercenaries, like, the guys that walked into Ukraine being like, oh, I'm gonna fight for the Ukrainians, right? That they finally got there and looked across the battlefield and were like, oh shit, this is a real military that actually has real military support, right? And the backing of like a real economy that is still working and still humming, right? Like, these guys walked in here thinking that they were going to walk into like a post invasion post Saddam Hussein Iraq, and that's just fucking not what happened. So they all just got blown away, right? And which I got to tell you, I knew it was going to happen. Like, you can't trust mercenaries. You can't rely on them. What do we got? I noticed today, 9 days ago, Netflix added the film Winter on Fire, Ukraine's Fight for Freedom to their YouTube. I don't think they have many full movies. Yeah. No, I mean, like, there are documentary films that have gotten made from the Ukrainian perspective, but of course Netflix is being dishonest because there are, like, very credible documentaries that have been made about the Donbass War, about the coup, about this whole thing. Like Oliver Stone's documentary, for fuck's sake, right? Like, I mean, in the full interview, not the 2-minute version, he actually says that Russia is getting to the point where his gentle approach is coming to an end and Russia is going to carpet bomb everything. Who's he? Is this Scott Ritter? I'd be very surprised, honestly. Like, I'm not going to say that he's not going to do that. Like, this is the target that gets carpet bombed. Like, he's not going to carpet bomb Kiev. Like, that's crazy. Like, that is actually crazy. From basically any perspective you wanna talk about, right? Starting to carpet bomb the city? No, that's an atrocity that he would never be forgiven for, right? Even by me, even by somebody who has been, like, really trying to see his perspective this entire time, and really trying to put a picture on this that I think is fair. If Putin started carpet bombing Kiev, that's the end of it, man. Like, he doesn't come back from that. Like, he doesn't. Like, that's a brutal act. Like, that's incredible. Carpet bombing this, these are where the Nazis are, right? If he wants to carpet bomb this, more power to him. Off he goes. Fucking level this. Turn this into the moonscape, man. Like, just blow the shit out of that. I'm completely fine with that. That's where the Nazis are. Zelensky was named in the Pandora Papers to have 1.3 and 30 million villa. Yeah, comedy and politics pays, baby. Yeah. No, I mean, well, why else would you do it? Like, why else would you be doing this, right? And what's so funny is that, like, Zelensky is, like, he's so obviously a puppet, and he has to know how big of a puppet he is in all of this. Like, he walks up to the military. Like, he was elected on a platform of peace, and there's this great moment where he, like, goes and walks through the troops, through the front line, and he's telling them, okay, it's time to disarm, right? I want you guys to disarm. And the Nazis basically just say, fuck you, get out of here. Like, they're not listening to him. They don't care what Zelensky says. Like, this is the thing that doesn't get well understood in Western media at all, right? And the West generally. Everybody's treating Zelensky like he's fighting and he's a hero. And he's also... If this was up to Zelensky, they would have already surrendered, right? It's not up to Zelensky. No one actually cares what this guy thinks. He's literally a clown. No one gives a shit what he says or thinks about anything. When he stands up and does a speech, when he gives an edict, when he gives an order, nobody cares in Ukraine. Because everybody knows who's in charge, and it's not him. Right? Like, the Nazis are in charge. Like, I don't know what it's going to take at this point for people to put 2 and 2 together. That, like, Zelensky can say what he wants, right? And if Zelensky even says, like, we surrender, put down your arms, all that kind of stuff, the Nazis aren't going to. They're not, because they know what their end game is, right? They know what's going to happen to them, right? Like, the Nazis are fairly aware how this goes for them, right? They're fighting to the death because they know that's what's going to happen. And so they might as well just go out in this blaze of glory. They're not going to listen to Zelensky. Zelensky's going to be like, war over. They're going to keep fighting. Like, that's what's happening. Lee Camp showed the evidence that those hospitals are actually Ukrainian military going in force everyone out after Russia bombed the place. Yeah, and then they say Russia is attacking civilians. Yeah, no, there's very credible evidence to show that that's the case. Putin arms shipments are now legitimate targets. U.S. Yeah. I mean, Putin, of course, is saying this because he can, right? That, of course, arms shipments were always legitimate targets, but he just couldn't do anything about it. But again, I was saying since the beginning, like, they can send as many weapons as they want. They can send as many weapons as they want. That's not the Ukrainians' problem. The Ukrainians' problem is they don't have the manpower. That's their problem. Well, they don't have the manpower and they don't have air superiority. I watched Lancaster, the Netflix doc, Winter on Fire, Ukraine's Fight for Freedom, tried to play after. Yeah. And the people of the world must suffer through skyrocketing prices on everything that's for the sake of defending what is considered the most corrupt country in Europe. Yeah. Like, but that's just the excuse. Right? Prices have gone through the roof because of the war. This is a war effort. You need to suck it up, bud. Those prices were going through the roof anyway. Right? It's just the excuse they're giving. Like, there's no reason for most prices. And of course, it looks like, again, it's worth bringing up. The Americans have completely shot themselves in the foot on this one. Right? Because they lack the ability for long-term planning. They don't actually care. They're fighting a war because they want war. And war makes the people who are in charge of America and foreign policy, it makes them more money, so they don't give a fuck. But what has it done? So it's cut them off from oil from the Russians, right? From gas and oil from the Russians, and ostensibly thereby from the Chinese and that whole trade organization, right? And they're so desperate now that they're turning to Venezuela. Like, literally, the Biden administration is looking at Venezuela and being like, hey, bud, we'll trade oil with you, right? And, of course, Maduro may actually go along with it if the United States acknowledges him as the leader of Venezuela, right? Like, if they do, and they actually... So that means that Juan Guaido's over, right? Like, Juan Guaido's dunzo finito, like, completely kaputski. Right? If the United States actually acknowledges that Maduro is the leader of Venezuela, not to mention the political embarrassment that has internally, like we here in Canada have been saying, Juan Guaido is the president of Venezuela for forever, and it's the dumbest shit of life. And then suddenly when there's a pinch, oh, actually, it turns out that Maduro is actually the leader. Like, we're so fucking stupid. And but that's the only term that I think Maduro would accept. Right? That if they're not going to do that, then Maduro's just going to be like, well, then no. Like, I'm not going to help you out of this fucking pinch if it doesn't get me anything. Right? And so the Americans have just like, it's like I've been saying since the beginning, man. If you sanction everybody, you're the isolated one. And now it's starting to become obvious that that's the case. I'd have to see the exact quote, Eric, because, like, again, I don't think Putin is going to start bombing cities and shit. He'll bomb the shit out of this. This is fair game. Like, this is fair. I'm actually a little bit surprised he hasn't done that already, honestly. I'm surprised that he is actually mounting this frontal offensive the way that he is. Like, I really assumed that they would be just, like, carpet bombing the shit out of it. He must have a pretty impressive artillery, though. Like, the people of Donbass had a fairly impressive artillery to begin with. And they might be able to get their objectives completed just with artillery fire, right? Which... yeah, that's probably the case. So, had a liberal yesterday look, we gotta stop listening to these fucking liberals, man. Like, these guys literally are, like, espousing, like, Russiagate bullshit. If you show them documents from the CIA or from the American State Department or from the Russian ambassadors from the United States, they tell you it's Russian propaganda. Like, Russian propaganda is the fake news of liberals. Like, they're so, like, it's getting unbelievably obvious and embarrassing for them, if you ask me. Like, these people who are walking around being like, Russian propaganda, it's just Russian propaganda, and I'm literally like, this is from the CIA. Like, this is a CIA document. Like, Russian propaganda. Oh, it's all Russian propaganda. Somebody's, like, sending me Daily Beast articles where they're like, they've confirmed that WikiLeaks is actually a Russian operative. And I'm like, you gotta have, like, brain worms to think that this is the case. You read the article and you're just like, their source is literally, trust me, bro. Like, that's their source. Like, the Daily Beast is not a source. All locations of foreign mercenaries in Ukraine are known to us. I want to warn you again, there will be no mercenary for the mercenaries, no matter where they are in the territory of Ukraine. Yeah. I mean, imagine, like, I think that Putin would actually be quite soft on the people who are involved in the Ukrainian military. Like, I think he understands the position that they're in, right? Like, you're a military man. You join the military, defend Ukraine, all that kind of lovely stuff. Like the infection of the military by these Nazis. Like you're sitting there being like, what's going on? Oh shit. I guess we're getting invaded by Russia. Oh my god. Right? Like it. You have to have sympathy for these people. Like they're in a fucking real tough spot, which is why I think Putin has been so restrained in how he's been moving forward. But mercenaries, like some asshole that's just coming in from wherever a stand, who gives a fuck, in order to like join the Ukrainians for money and glory. Yeah, fuck these guys. Like fuck these guys. Like fire javelin missiles at these guys. Do whatever you want to them. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to run because they're mercenaries. They're not going to grind in or they're just there for opportunism. That's all. That's the only reason they're there. Robert Stan. Don't know if I've ever seen you here, Robert. Good to see you. Ukrainian Agony, The Concealed War is another excellent documentary. The best? Oh, yeah. Good one. Yeah, I mean, the Concealed War, right? Like the Donbass War. Like, nobody is talking about the Donbass War, man. It just doesn't happen. And the only people I hear regularly bring up the Donbass War is someone like Aaron Matei. And even Aaron Matei will bring it up in this, like, very much, like, passing comment kind of thing. And then after he talks about the Donbass War, he immediately affirms that what Putin did was like bad or a war crime or anything like this. And I'm like, excuse me. So you're telling me there was already a war in the region that was going on, and you're telling me that it was a war of aggression by Nazis against Russians. So Putin didn't start the conflict, he joined the conflict. Right? You see how that's significantly different, right? Like you see how those two things are very different from one another. And we can have questions. We can talk about the validity of Putin's actions, but if we're going to talk about the validity of his actions, we've got to talk about what was actually going on, right? Which nobody wants to do. Nobody wants to talk about the Donbass War. Like everybody is willing to talk about the coup. Everybody's willing to talk about the Nazis to a degree. Right? Nobody wants to admit that the Nazis have as much control as they do, but with a couple of exceptions. But like nobody is talking about the Donbass War. It's like there's just this blind spot. Like we literally cannot talk about who is actually the aggressors in this conflict. And like some of the stuff that people say to me is just childish. Like, well, the Russians are the one that crossed the border, so they're the bad guys. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about, bro? But this is what I'm talking about, like Jackson Hinkle, Jimmy Dore, but it's always in this kind of in passing sort of a way, right? It's like they don't seem to understand how crucial this is and how big a turning point linchpin this is to understanding what's going on. My sister was like, Russia is bombing people too. No one should attack anyone. Be careful. You don't want to sound like you support Russia. Like, yeah, just war is bad. We don't need to know anything about it. We can just Assange got denied to the appeal of the Supreme Court. What blows me away about the Assange situation, dude, is Assange is not an American citizen. Like, the American government literally has no authority. Like, literally none. They're calling for extradition to like get Assange into America so they can put him on trial. He's not a fucking American citizen. Like, what the fuck are you even talking about? The idea that he has had to undergo any of the things that he has experienced is all being done under this pretense that the United States has the right to be able to extradite a non-citizen into their territory, to be able to prosecute him for crimes he's literally not a citizen of the United States. Like, that's what blows my fucking ass off, man, about the Assange thing. Like, their claim is literally like, we are the United States. We supersede all governmental or national or foreign law. That if we want somebody, it doesn't matter. We have the right to get them, and if you stand against us, then you're the bad guys. It's like, what the fuck are you fucking talking about? Like, Assange is not a United States citizen, right? Like, what the fuck? What is the Communist Party statement on Ukraine? Anti-war, basically. They're taking the anti-war stance. I've seen them talk about the Nazis and the coup. Not much about the Donbass war, but pretty conservative line, if you ask me. Liberal, NDP, Conservative, and Green are all pro-Ukraine, pro-sanctions. Oh, you mean the parties, the neoliberal parties that have been bought by the death cult are all pro-Ukraine and pro-sanctions? I'm shocked. Pierre was talked about on CTV, CBC. They're trying to make him fight against Charest. Well, yeah, they want an interesting fight. It's probably just going to be Pierre, right? Like, although there's a lot of voices in there. Mercenaries are not entitled to the status of combatant, prisoner of war, or any of the categories of protected persons by the Geneva Convention unless they're wounded or sick. Yeah, like mercenaries are just like the hangers-on of war, right? Like as opportunistic as you can get. That's the reason why they're there. Just gold, like really. Russia presidential election is in 2 years. I don't think Putin will run again. He has hinted this is his last leadership. I wonder who will replace him. We'll see. We'll see about that. Liberals keep calling for no-fly zone. Yeah, it's because they don't know what they're asking for, right? Like, they don't actually know what they're asking for. Like, liberals don't actually know anything about what's going on, right? And they don't really know what the terms that they're even talking about actually are, right? Which the American press needs. It really needs a populace that is this poorly informed and this gullible. Because the end game for the Americans is that when Putin and Ukraine, when Russia and Ukraine come to terms, right? And there are terms. Like, it's not like America, right? Like, here in America, we really think, like, this guy's invaded. That means he's going to be here forever, and he's going to take that territory out, and it's going to become his territory forever, just like we did to Iraq, right? Just like we're doing all across the Middle East. That's the way we act. We go into a region, it's ours now. And we're like neo-colonizers, right? That's how we are. That's how we act. It's not what Putin's doing, and it's not what he's interested in doing. He has very clearly stated war goals. The three major war goals, and of course there are other ones that are ancillary, but the three major ones are that the Donbass region be declared independent, be recognized as independent, that Crimea be recognized as a Russian state, and that Ukraine agrees not to join NATO, right? And, like, he's going to get those goals. Like, those objectives are going to happen. It's just how much blood do the Ukrainians want to spill before that occurs? And once he gets that once he gets that signed, like, once that's agreed upon, and everybody signs the document and all that kind of stuff, Putin's going to begin the withdrawal process. And when that begins happening, the Americans are going to declare it a victory. Right? Like, that's what's going to happen here in the West, is that the Western press is going to say, we did it! Putin's leaving! Yeah, get out of here, Putin! Haha, we're the greatest! We won! We won, Ukraine! Yeah! Like, that's how the West is going to report it. They're going to say that it's a victory. They're going to do the USA chant, right? And all of the newspaper will be like victory, like literally victory. It'll be victory with an exclamation point. And everything will be like about how we kicked Putin's butt. And we'll make like a big blockbuster film, like another Rocky Balboa, where he fights a fucking another Russian, right? And it'll, like, literally, it'll be like that. They'll just do a remake of that movie, like Rocky 3, I think. And it'll be, he's unstoppable, right? Like, and it's just like, blah, blah, like, it'll be the same fucking shit. And we will act as though we won. When Putin will get literally everything he wants, right? And what does he want? He wants the Donbass region to be declared independent, which I think is really smart from his perspective. He wants Crimea to be acknowledged as a Russian state, which, I mean, it's already a Russian state, so he just wants to acknowledge it. And then he wants Ukraine not to join NATO, which again is like, yeah, like, yeah, I would definitely not want Ukraine to be part of NATO if I was Putin. And so he's going to get everything he wants. He's going to achieve all his war goals. He's going to withdraw his military machine instead of pouring money into it endlessly. He's going to de-escalate, right, after his victory, complete dominant victory over Ukraine, and will say we're the winners. Get ready for it. And so, and the reason why the Americans will be able to get away with this is because we're so fucking stupid. We don't know anything. Like, we don't understand how any of this works. We don't understand how war works. We don't understand how territorialism works. We don't understand any of this kind of stuff. We don't know what casus bellis are. We don't know anything about how international politics works. We literally don't know how a no-fly zone works. Like, we think that we'll say, no-fly zone, and it'll be like a barrier that comes up, and it'll be like laser beams will suddenly be like, no-fly zone, no-fly zone. And if the Russians try to go into the no-fly zone, like, the lasers will just prevent them from happening, right? Like, that's literally how our stupid, dumb, Marvel rot brains work, right? Whereas if you actually stop and think about what a no-fly zone actually is, we'll declare a no-fly zone. So what we're saying is no-fly zone. That means we'll shoot down any plane that comes into that region. So what? Now Russia's going to fly in there, we're going to shoot? So you're escalating to nuclear war is what you're doing, right? Like, it's the dumbest thing anybody could do right now. And yet liberals are just like, yeah, no-fly zone. That makes total sense because my brain is as smart as a Marvel movie. Like, what, can't we just get Doctor Strange in there? Can't we just get Doctor Strange in there and open a portal or something? You know? Like, come on, where's Tony Stark? Get Tony Stark to do some kind of mathematics and he'll math his way out of it. Like, that's who we are. Like, we're so fucking stupid. We literally think that Marvel movies are how this works. You know? Like, we're so fucking dumb. It's made by a bunch of independent German journalists. You can find it dubbed in English. Amazing. Many countries have warned mercenaries they could be facing war crimes. Disciplined national armies understand there are rules of engagement. Well, also, it's just kind of a piss-off, frankly. Like, even if I was the Ukrainians, like, this is a fight between siblings. Like, that is the way to look at this conflict. That it is a fight between siblings. That Ukraine used to be part of Russia. It was part of Russia for longer than it's been independent. Right? Like, they are very related to one another, and this is a conflict that has, like, familial ties, right? And it's very much like two siblings fighting, and in come these fucking mercenaries, being like, oh, there's money to be made here. Like, get the fuck out of here! I'd be so pissed off. Oh, thanks, Robert. No, I love talking to the chat, bud. I love talking to the chat. Talking to the chat's my favorite part. So you say something, I'll probably get to it. Until this thing gets too ridiculous, and then it'll come down to who super chats or whatever, but we're not there yet. Donbass Republic had a big Tonka-U ballistic missile attack. Just be peaceful. The Nazis who did this aren't peaceful. Yeah. Yeah, like, it's an unfortunate truth about the anti-war movement. Is like, I respect the position, no war, right? Like, sure, no war, great. But, like, there is war. And it once you actually figure out what's actually happening in the region, it becomes very difficult to want to condemn Putin. Like, is it deeply unfortunate? Yeah. Does it suck a lot? Yeah. I don't think Putin had a choice. Straight up. Like, you look at what happened, and I think if your conclusion is, well, Putin shouldn't have done it, it's like, oh, so you're fine with Nazis bombing Russians on the Russian border while NATO is beginning encroachment into that region? I think you're fucking out of your mind. Like, I think you're fucking out of your mind. Like, really. And most liberals are. Like, they're just out of their fucking minds. Like the Marvel movie brain rot is fucking real. Like, people think Putin is just like Hydra or something. Like, it's just... We literally do not understand how anything actually works. And it's become really obvious. If Iron Man was alive, he would not let this stand. If you're talking about Tony Stark, I know. If you're talking about Stalin, you're damn right. That's funny, Harry. That's funny. The liberal understanding is that Putin is trying to do a cultural genocide in Ukraine because he stated he doesn't recognize Ukraine as a country, blah, 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 blah. Like, yeah, right. Again, just ignore the Donbass war, right? Just ignore the fucking Donbass war. Like, don't need to pay any attention to this. Yeah, and the thing that's so frustrating, seeing so many liberals saying those 3 goals are imperialist goals, yeah. And I also see liberals saying there isn't 80% support from Crimea citizen to be part of Russia. Yeah, it's just the brain rot, right? Like, you can't acknowledge facts. Like this is what's so fucking annoying about this period of time. And I gotta tell you, like, a lot of my angst about whether or not this channel was actually going to be able to monetize, a lot of that angst was about the timing of all of this. That I am standing around saying what I'm saying as people who say what I say get removed, right? Like the timing of it is so fucking terrible. Like, I'm not reporting on like Doug Ford at the moment. Like, I'm not saying like, yeah, Doug Ford, he's privatized. I mean, I do have those links. I mean, Doug Ford's trying to privatize the healthcare industry, right? Ontarians need to know Doug Ford is en route to win the provincial election, and private health care is coming. Most of you will not be able to afford it, and most will suffer the consequences of the interests of the wealthy few. Without good health, much of life is difficult. Yeah. Like, that's not what was, like, that wasn't the focus of my stream over the last week. The focus of my stream was literally this. And that's when the monetization question came down. So it's just like... Glaywitz radio station, second Gulf of Tonkin incident, WMD's Afghanistan won't turn over Bin Laden, Gaddafi, totally killing civilians, guys. Yep, all of that, right? All that. Hey, don't forget about the Iranian Contras like throwing babies out of incubators. Come on, that's a normal thing, right? That's a thing that's completely believable, right? Like, I remember being a kid and first hearing that story and being like, probably not. Like, seems. What? No, I doubt it. Like, I really do. I doubt it. Seems even like that's a story that even if somebody had said that about Nazis, you know, like Nazi troops, I would have been like, really? I don't know, guys. Like, that seems aggressively unrealistic. Like, that seems really, really like, that's kind of what made the whole like Anakin's turn to the dark side in the Star Wars movies a bit like, I don't think so. He like walks into a room and there's just like baby Jedi being like, yeah, we're baby Jedi. And he's just like, I'm going to kill all you baby Jedi. And I'm just like, I don't know. Seems, did this really get set up? Is this really like, anyway. I'm so tired of NATO and EU propping up more conflict. Yeah, dude. Like, yeah. And it's completely us. Like, it's completely us. Like, when the rest of the world has border conflicts and things like this, like, they're fairly minor scuffles and they're like disagreements and all this kind of stuff. Like what's going to happen in Taiwan? Like, the Chinese-Taiwan dispute is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, it's a long-standing dispute that would have already been resolved if not for the Americans. And and when the Chinese move in, it'll be a dust up. Like, it's not going to be this long protracted thing. The Chinese are going to surround the thing and then fly some planes in, right? They'll get a boat. Xi Jinping will do a speech from the palace. That'll be it, right? Like, the Chinese are not going to move into that region if it's going to be like a long, protracted, lengthy war. That's just not how the Chinese roll. Like, they want to basically move in and just be like, boop, and it's ours. And when they move in to do that, that's exactly what it's going to be like. Less than 3 months until the Ontario election. Wonder if Ford will lose in majority and win in a minority. Yeah, I mean, who knows, dude? I think people are still too distracted by everything. And freaking liberals keeps talking about NATO like a good force in the world. Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about NATO is that, like, if we go to the global picture, right? Like, NATO actually could be a force for good. It could, actually. Like, if you want to take somebody like John Mearsheimer's position about NATO, what NATO does is prevent something like Russia or any other kind of big organization, you think China or anything, from just kind of sweeping through and taking over Europe, right? That the Americans are involved in Europe, that there's this kind of formal agreement. The issue is that these Westerners just keep spreading it. And they don't need to. Like, if NATO was there and its borders were set and everybody was just like, okay, cool, this is NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, we're here as a defensive pact. These nations all agree with one another that we are in a, like, if you attack one of us, it's a big deal for all of us, and we're going to treat it that way. There isn't anything inherently wrong about this. But the truth is that the white supremacist ethos and the American ethos is expansionist, right? That Americans and Westerners generally view themselves as the best, right? Like that we're the greatest, and so we want to spread that greatness throughout the rest of the world, right? Like what were they saying the whole time they were invading Iraq? And they still say this. They still say this, right? We're spreading democracy, right? That's their whole goal. Their ideology is that once the entire world is made up of liberal democracies, then those liberal democracies will bend towards peace. And when we go in and depose some kind of leader or something who does not have a liberal democracy, and we install a liberal democracy, what we're doing is spreading peace in the world. Like they genuinely talk this way. This is their belief system, that we spread peace through the barrel of a gun, right? That we spread peace through war, and it's not working. Obviously, it's not working. Like this is a disaster writ large, enormous disaster. They've failed. All of their endeavors have been a complete and total failure. There isn't a single war goal that they've actually achieved in any meaningful way. Like, the only thing they've actually really managed to do is just empower and enrich the most psychopathic people on the planet. Like, that's really all they've done. And if NATO was like what it was, which is a defensive alliance that just acted defensively and was just like, oh, NATO's in the borders, that would be completely fine. It's not what it's done. You can just take a look at the Ukraine crisis to know that that's the truth. For God's sakes, like NATO's backing a coup, funding Nazis, attacking Donbass, like all this kind of stuff. That's not a defensive alliance, right? That's terrifying. It's terrifying what they're doing. And so, if you ask me, the problem isn't NATO per se. It's this white supremacist ethos that what we do is good because we're white, basically. Yeah, if that happens, we're going to need to brace another spike in hate crimes. Yep. Well, I mean, the pettiness that has come towards the Russians this whole time. Like, it's so fucking petty what we're doing. Like, there's stories of how, like, a pianist who is Russian, but he lives here in North America, he's, like, not allowed to play now. It's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, he's not, like, what? All right, guys, I got to give my dog some peanut butter. He's definitely hankering. So I'm going to play this Scott Ritter clip. It's only 2 minutes.
The United States and European Union mobilized this virulent nationalist group out of Lvov in western Ukraine, among whom were these neo-Nazis who worship Stepan Bandera and the Banderista movement, which was a pro-Nazi Ukrainian national movement, carried out a resistance in that area for decades. These guys came in and took over Maidan, violently overthrew the legitimate president of Ukraine, and then imposed themselves through force of violence into the Ukrainian body politic. To give you an example of how powerful they are, when Poroshenko, who was the president before Zelensky, negotiated the Minsk Accords in 2014, 2015, he agreed that all they had to do is give a special autonomous situation to their status to the Donetsk and Lugansk, and they would stay part of Ukraine. He agreed with Germany and France. Then he came back and the neo-Nazis said, you try and implement that, we'll kill you. Americans get upset with a bunch of rioters taking the capital and then leaving the same day. I get upset about it. I'm not happy about it. But it ain't an insurrection. An insurrection is what happened in Ukraine. What's happening every day. Zelensky was told he was elected to be the president who brought peace. If you remember, Zelensky toured the front line because they were supposed to disarm. And he went up to the Azov battalion and he said, disarm. And they laughed at him, kicked him out. He said, I'm the president of Ukraine. They said, shut up, we'll slap you. He had to leave. And he was told, if you sign Minsk, we will hang you by the neck until dead. That's the control these people have. And they've done it in the military. These people should have been disbanded, arrested, shot. Instead, the military absorbed them and then promoted their officers throughout the ranks so that there's neo-Nazis everywhere. And the biggest embarrassment of all is when British, American, and Canadian troops go to Ukraine to train that military and NATO tactics, NATO equipment, The photographs show that they're training the Azov battalion because those were the first units Ukrainian military brought forward for training. We trained Nazis.
We train Nazis, right? And we can't control them. I think that's the big thing. We can't control them, right? Like that's why you don't fund Nazis. That's why you don't support Nazis. This absurd like Marvel brain rot bullshit that we hear where it's like, well, yeah, well, you'll use the Nazis as fodder. Yeah, the Nazis will be fodder in the front line, and they'll fight at the front line, and they'll be totally fine. Like, you can't control people. Like, you can't control these guys, right?
I get upset about.
Like, that's the reason why you don't support Nazis ever, because they are self-interested exclusively. They're using you, right? And you can trick yourself into thinking that you're also using them, but they operate differently than you do, right? Like, there's an entire rule set that exists in your mind naturally, right? That you think is this like forbidden thing. There's this forbidden activity that you've closed in your mind. And it's like, no, we can negotiate, we can figure it out, we can do that kind of stuff. And if we have to use violence, well, it'll be our last case kind of thing, right? That's absolutely not how the Nazis think. Nazis are straight up just like, yeah, if you're talking to us and we're talking to you, it's because we're distracting you to put a knife in your back, right? Nazis exist in violence, right? They use violence on purpose, right? While you are acting as though like, oh, violence is over there and we'll react to it if we have to and defend ourselves, all this kind of stuff. Nazis are actively using violence on purpose to further their own personal goals. And the only reason they haven't used violence against you is because you're still useful to them, right? Like, Nazis are extremely dangerous. And this idea that we're just supposed to shrug and be like, well, you know, there's Nazis everywhere, you know, Jonathan. There's Nazis everywhere. There are Nazis in the United States too, you know. Like, dude, there's like a sharp difference between like the Nazis that exist in Russia's military even, and the idea of like the Nazis taking over the government, right? Which is what's happened in Ukraine. That the West has trained, funded, and armed every conceivable form of extremism around the world. Why the fuck would people be surprised when they're training, funding, and arming something so close to home? Nazis. Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think that it's just difficult for people to accept from a straight up, like when we say something like we're arming the Taliban, right? Like it's kind of an abstraction. We don't really understand who the Taliban are or any of this kind of, like same with like Al-Qaeda or any of this. Like these are just boogeymen. Nazis have like a very intrinsic cultural tie to us. Like our grandparents fought Nazis. Like we have valorized an entire generation of people for going overseas and fighting the Germans during World War II, right? Like there's this incredible narrative, and like Nazis have attained a kind of like supervillain-esque position that like if it and we love destroying, like Nazis are subhuman. Like you can kill a Nazi on film and everybody will be like, yeah, great. Right? Like Indiana Jones, for God's sakes. Like literally just like shooting Nazis and we're all just like, yeah, shooting Nazis, right? Off you go. The only person who ever was like shocked about it was his own father, and only because he was shocked that his own son would actually shoot someone, right? But if you actually said to him like, yeah, but they're Nazis, he'd be like, yeah, fuck Nazis. Like fuck these guys. So we are really struggling as a people, and I can see this, and I am. It's not that I'm not sympathetic to this. I just wish it was happening faster. I wish it was happening faster. I wish people were more connecting to the whole like, oh fuck yeah, like funding Nazis is bad. Yeah, I remember fighting Nazis in computer games such as Wolfenstein 3D, though I think they removed them at some point. No, the Wolfenstein franchise has gone like ultra, like you are killing Nazis. Like they're not some other group. They're not some like they've gone so far in the direction of you are killing Nazis in the Wolfenstein franchise that you can't actually buy the game Wolfenstein in Germany because it violates the laws they have surrounding Nazi symbolism. And the game developer attempted to make the argument that, but you're killing Nazis. Like, you're on the side of the people who are killing Nazis. And the Germans were just like, nah, that's okay. You know, like, that even though you're killing Nazis, and this is an interesting way of looking at it, an interesting point, because it's something I think about as well. Even though you're killing the Nazis, you are still glorifying Nazism, right? Because you are putting the Nazis in like this super villain-esque, super human kind of position where you've got to send in like this incredible god-type person to like single-handedly mow down like robot zombie versions of Hitler and shit. And so it's a form of glorification, even if it is to kill them, right? You're still creating this image of them as caricature, as and that I do think that is part of what has allowed us to forget that the Nazis are bad, right? Like that we, because we have such like Marvel brain rot, like the Nazis are just another fictional like Hydra, right? They're not real. They people don't really see them as real, and they and I think part of it is because of this glorification, right? That like the Nazi symbol isn't real. It might as well just be an octopus, as far as lots of people are concerned, I think. That is a good point, John. The people who let the white supremacists cleanse the undesirables don't realize that they too will be turned on next. Yeah, the simping for Nazis is at an insane level. Well, I get it, because it is like a hard line, right? And once you cross that line, like you can't view your own country the same, right? Like if you're a person who's standing in Canada and the United States who actually genuinely does believe that we are a force for good in the world, or that at least we're trying our best, well, that whole narrative goes away the second you accept we fund Nazis, right? Like as soon as you accept that we fund Nazis, no, we can't be a force for good. Like that's not possible. It's not possible to simultaneously fund Nazis and also claim that we are at least trying our best. Well, you know what shows you that that's total bullshit, that we're not trying our best at all, that we're funding neo-Nazis. Like, yeah, that's not trying our best, right? That's not doing the best we can by a wide margin. I always found the Nazi experiments and all the resources they directed towards it an interesting angle. Like, just all the R&D focus of them. Yeah, well, they obviously, like, were scientists, and they obviously cared about that stuff. They were just willing to do a lot of dark, crazy shit, like the eugenics projects, right? All this kind of crazy nonsense that happened. We've gone from you're unintelligent in an argument if you call a person a Nazi to Putin is worse than Hitler. Yeah, like I think what are they calling him? They're calling him Pootler. Right, all that, but that's nothing new. Like we did the same thing to Saddam Hussein. We did the same thing to Gaddafi. Right, like we act as though these people are Hitler, and like you know who's Hitler? Us. Like we are, right? I actually think like Hitler would have been amazed at how much we've managed to accomplish. Like we're committing a genocide, like a full scale genocide in Palestine, right? This is a very impressive genocide, right? Very, very efficiently done, very effective. You've created a whole segregation society, right? The genocide that's ongoing in Yemen, right? Very, very effective. Very, very. The ongoing war in Egypt, Libya, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, right? Syria here, like. Hitler was basically focused on this whole area, right? Like, his claiming of France was pretty impressive, right? So, like, you take a look at the size and scale of it, right? Like, this is World War II, pushing into Russia as well, right? Well, what are the Americans up to, right? The Americans got this going on, not to mention all the shit they're doing over here, not to mention all this shit, right? Like, oh yeah, fascism is alive and well, dude. Is there a version of Antifa called Antina, anti-Nazi? I've been very unimpressed with the anti-fascists, like the March Against Nazis, the anti-fascists that exist in the pseudo-left. Like, they don't care about Nazism at all. Like, it doesn't matter to them. Like, if the choice is between, like, to me, that it's really boiled down to, like, if I have to choose between Russian oligarchs or Nazis, I'm going to choose the oligarchs, right? Because while the oligarchs are opportunists and bullies, they're not actively seeking a path of ethnic cleansing. Like, that seems pretty straightforward. Whereas the quote-unquote anti-fascists from the pseudo-left, their position is basically, well, if I have to choose between Russian oligarchs and Nazis, I choose Nazis, right? Because in their mind, oligarchy is just as bad as Nazism. Like, it's the same as far as they're concerned. And I think it's because of this sort of glorification and marvelization of our brains, where we don't really understand like what the Nazis actually are anymore. They're just a cartoon caricature of themselves now. Oh yeah, and the propaganda machine here would make Goebbels blush. Yeah, are you kidding me? That's really what Goebbels would be talking about, dude. He would be talking about like American movies. He'd be talking about the Marvel movies. I think the Marvel movies are some of the greatest propaganda achievements in the world, that in the history of the world. Just like, how do you create a stupid, illiterate, just group of cattle who view the world in a very like we good guys, they bad guys, while completely uninforming anybody about who is anyone on the world stage. Like, as far as any of these fucking Marvel brain rot kids are concerned, Putin is just another like Marvel supervillain, right? That like Spider-Man will go fight Putin. You know, like that's really where their brain is, and they don't live like at all in reality. They have no idea who anybody is in the story of reality, right? And that's well curated. There's a reason why my channel is growing. There's a reason why like I'm moving up, because I'm willing to stand up and be like, hey, this is the real narrative of what's actually going on in the world. When like if all you do is pay attention to corporate media or like fucking these dumbass Marvel movies, then you're illiterate. You don't know anything. Like, and in some cases, the worst version of it, in my view, are the Rachel Maddow viewers, right? If you watch Rachel Maddow and that's the person who you're trusting your media information from, you're worse than illiterate. Like, you're so far in the basement. Like, we got to get you to a place, like, we got to like normalize your brain, right? Before you can even begin understanding the world around you. I will always going to say that if Hitler didn't expand Western but Eastern, then the West would have never declared war on Germany. I think the only reason why America gets involved in the war at all is because Russia won on the border. They started to push the Germans back. That if Germany had just swept across Russia and actually taken Russia, I think America would have just happily kept trading with Hitler. Would have just happily, like, this is my what if Hitler won the war, right? So like we saw lots of those comics when we were growing up. What if Hitler won the war? Well, the reality is that if Hitler had have won the war, the Americans and the Germans would have been tight trading partners. They would have worked very closely with one another, as they were before the war, and on the lead up to the war, and amidst the war, right? That what actually happens is that once the Soviets defeat the Nazis and begin pushing them out of their territory, the Americans go, well, we can't let the Soviets take Europe. So they get involved, right? But if Germany had have defeated the Soviets, we would have happily continued trading with them the way that we were. And happily, just like continue. And in many ways, the internal suppression of the populace would have just continued and gotten worse, frankly. We would have very much gone along with the Nazis in their worldview and how they worked. Like, segregation still existed. Like, we were a very segregationist society, right? Yeah, this is why the story of the newer Wolfenstein games is so cringe. Yeah, because it does present America as if they're the saviors. When, like, America was very opportunistic in World War II, if you ask me. That, like, the war against Germany basically gets fought after they lose. That the Soviets were going to push through, and they were going to push through all the way, and they were going to take all of Europe, right? And the Americans were pretty well aware once the Soviets got a hold of Europe, they weren't going to give it up, right? They were going to keep it, and they were just going to turn it into more Soviet Union, right? And how did they know that? Because that's what they said. They were very upfront about that. And so the United States pushes in, not to, and they use the excuse that they're pushing in to defeat the Germans, so that they don't actually have to get into a war with Russia. But that's essentially what they're doing, right? And they all just meet in Germany, right? Boop. Yeah, I'm very disappointed with anarchists right now because 90% of all anarchists that I've talked to are all pivoting. The liberal lines, except for anarchists that are anti-war. It annoys the living hell out of me. Yeah, I mean, that's classic, right? For all their, like, we're against state power and all this kind of stuff, they seem perfectly fine with state power as long as it's their state. But if the Nazis simply went to war towards the Russians instead of going to the West, I argue that France, Great Britain, other Western great powers would have supported Germany. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, especially France. Like, France is its own thing. Like, even today with all of this incredible, like, anti-Russian propaganda and all this kind of stuff, like, France is still allowing people on their media who are talking the way that I talk. Right, I've seen lots of Ukrainians going on to France news and talking the way that I talk about the situation. Right, so France has always been its own thing. Like, it's not, and could Germany have successfully done the warring and moved in the direction that he was doing? And also, you got to remember, Eric, I don't know why I didn't lead with this. This is really true. That World War II only really begins from the German perspective because of the outcome from World War I, right? And World War I only really occurs because of the internal politics of the upper class intersecting with the rise of industrial war. Right? That, like, really, when you take a look at how the events of World War I began, it was very similar to all of the wars that came before it, right? There was some kind of political assassination, or there was some kind of political moment that occurred. Everybody put up the banners, and, like, all of the arrangements and negotiations and military alliances that existed amongst the houses. Banners drawn, send your troops. Well, what was the difference between World War I and all the wars that came before it? We made a Gatling gun, right? Like, we created a gun that could sit in a place and just mow people down. And we have the documents. Like, we've got the generals on the lead up to World War I literally saying of these Gatling guns, we'll just keep sending men at them. It can't possibly kill them all. And the answer to that was, yes, it can. Just need to see one of these in action one time to know that this thing will fucking mow down all of your troops. All of your troops. You send infinite troops at it. It's just gonna... That's it. Right? That's the end of it. Right? And so that industrialization, that technological advantage, right? That completely shifted the nature of war. Because before that, what war was you'd get a group of dudes together and they would mash into one another with their, like, single shot rifles, right? Maybe they had cannons, right, at this point. And then there'd be bayonet charges and things like this, right? And, like, warfare had advanced, but it essentially was a continuation of medieval warfare. That, like, you had knights and troops and, like, and it would be common, even in the era on the lead up to World War I, for men to have, like, swords on their hips and like small arms and daggers and things like this, because they knew that this is part of the effect. Like, if these guys didn't have single shot muskets, they'd be using bows and arrows, for God's sakes, right? Like the iterative nature of the war had not gotten industrialized to this level. And then World War I happens, and it does get industrialized. And what that means is that instead of your conflict being, boom, we fight for a day or two, like we take our time to get to the place and then we fight. It takes a day or two, maybe a week, right? A winner is declared, right? Everybody gets home, prisoners are taken, right? And then there's a ransoming. And what happens 99.9% of the time is, okay, we were fighting over this parcel of land. I won, so that parcel of land is mine now. So I get it. But you know what? I'll ransom it back to you for some gold. And they ransom the gold back, and everybody goes home. And that's the dust up. And what ultimately happens is just like an exchange of gold. So it literally is like gold for blood, right? Like, but post World War I, the Gatling gun, well, okay, that changes the nature of warfare completely. You can't just walk at this thing, right? They've got barbed wire in front of it. Like, you literally cannot walk at this thing. You will be mowed down. And so what do? Trench warfare, right? You can't shoot me if I'm in a trench, right? So, you can't shoot me if I'm in a trench. And then you'd have, like, smoke screens and things like this where you'd come up and try to get through. You're trying to, like, do like, raids on this Gatling gun position, right? So you got trenches. Okay, well, now I'm lobbing artillery fire, right? And then you got the helmets, and you got all this kind of stuff. And then the invention of rifling, where we've got a single shot rifle that can now shoot multiple times and shoot straight, right? Like, muskets didn't shoot straight. They were powerful. They would blow a hole in something if they hit it, but they didn't shoot straight. So the invention of rifling, where you could shoot a target, and so now you've got snipers shooting Gatling gun positions, like you've got entrenched positions, trench warfare, barbed wire, mustard gas, artillery fire, planes flying overhead. And so now your 2-day scuffle on a plot of land turns into a 6-month affair that absolutely destroys the territory completely, right? Rifles already long existed before World War I. No, I'm very specifically talking about the advent of the technology of rifling. That there's a difference between a rifle and rifling. Like, it's a technological advancement that allows guns to shoot straight. And because we didn't actually know, like, we literally were creating guns that went boom and then shrapnel, right? Like, it was rifling is like sniper technology. Like, it's a whole other iteration. Anyway, that's not the point. Okay, let's go, bud. The invention of rifle. Because you might be right. I could be wrong. Wow. It did not become commonplace until the 19th century. So perhaps the correction that I'll make at the moment, because I do want to move on, is that the technology was there. It wasn't implemented. Maybe is the better way to say it. That, like, we had the technology, it just hadn't become mass produced until World War I, until that period of time. That's cool though, man. I love it. But in any case, the result of this is that once you seized territory, you never gave it back. Like, that was over, right? Like, it took you 6 months to get that territory. You had to destroy the land to do it. You had to spend a whole fuck ton of money on weapons and arms and grenades and shells and all this crazy shit. You start implementing all this crazy nonsense so that once you actually seize land, you never give it back. There's no such thing as ransoming the land away. And so what this means is that post-World War I, which World War I is just, like, insane, right? Like, it's insane what happens in World War I. Well, they turn to Germany and they say, well, you are the one, you started this, you're the one that's responsible for paying it all back, right? And they put on Germany a debt that it could never possibly pay, right? Literally could never possibly pay. It was humiliating for the Germans, right? And it was, and everybody knew it. right? No, and nobody was pretending like it wasn't. Like it was a humiliation of the Germans and the German civilization. And what arose from that humiliation? Hitler, right? Like Hitler arose from that. And so when Germany goes to war, it's very specifically going to war against the people who humiliated them in World War I. And who's that? The United Kingdom, France, right? Like, so when Hitler begins his warring, it's specifically to get one over on these guys, right? To basically tell them to fuck off, right? From World War I. So and then it's after he seizes France, especially after his seizure of France, that he begins to look westward and begins to think about expansionism and the greater glory of Germany and all this kind of crazy shit, right? I'm more or less of the opinion that he should have never gone against the Soviets. Like that, to me, like if Hitler had have actually just done all of the war that he did, right in this area, and just secured that, and then just lived in that reality where he secured all of this territory for Germany, and this is all part of Greater Germany now, he basically would have died in power, and that would have been the story, right? But Hitler was nuts, right? His invasion of Russia is absolutely crazy, if you ask me. Like, what a crazy thing to even attempt. Especially, like, the manic nature of it. Right? Like just the absolute like manic nature of like more war, another front, another front for the glory of Germany, another. It was just never ending for him, right? Like he had to have known that what he was doing was fucking suicidal as shit. That eventually this is gonna blow up on him, right? Like, because to me, the success initially of Germany was the Blitzkrieg, which no one had ever seen before. Like, people did not actually know or understand what a Blitzkrieg was or what it could actually achieve. Like, we all make fun of France. Oh, France surrendered. What a bunch of losers. Ha ha ha. No, dude. Like, the Germans rolled tanks in there and they came in so fast that they were in the city of Paris before the military even knew what was happening, right? Like literally you've got tanks and guns pointed at your head as you're getting out of bed that morning, right? Like it's over. Like it's over. The Blitzkrieg was so fast, and people didn't understand how quickly it could happen. Like it really used to be like if you would hear the announcement, the Germans are invading. Well, you'd have time. Like, you'd have time to actually, like, form ranks and get together and do all that kind of stuff and prepare, right? The Blitzkrieg eliminated that. It was straight up like, hey, the Germans are attacking, they're here. And that was it. Like, that was the end of it. And so, what are the French supposed to do? Of course they surrendered. Like, anything else would be, like, complete and total devastation. It'd be a slaughter. It wouldn't be a fight. It would just be a slaughter. And the Soviets had the benefit of having studied the Blitzkrieg and studied the tactic and its strengths and found its weakness, right? And its weakness is that it relies on momentum. It relies completely on the idea of like, we're going to move across like a shot, like, right? So you just never let them get to that. You never let them form up and be able to actually rumble across the field like that, right? And how do you do that? Encirclement, right? Highly criticized from the West. The Trotskyists especially love to go after the encirclement strategy and pretend as though it was this like horrible, evil kind of a thing. Literally the way you stop the Blitzkrieg from gaining its momentum is the encirclement strategy. So that you're constantly tripping it up. You're constantly getting in its way. You're constantly doing things that like guerrilla tactics and the like to be able to, so that they can never actually get the momentum to rumble forward. Because if they had just let the Germans get the Blitzkrieg going and just like roar, so they could just blow through everything, they'd be in Moscow before you know it, right? So they just created encirclement strategies and they created hang-ups and snags to get in their way. And this caused the Germans a lot of problems. Oh, but at what cost, John? The casualties. Like, that's war, baby. Like, that's war. Like, especially this industrialized tank warfare. Unbelievable. Like, unbelievable. World War II is such an unbelievable period of time for so many different reasons and so many different perspectives, man. Like, what an insane, like, World War II would be like if we created mech technology and there were giant mechs going around shooting rockets and shit. And we all just looked at each other and been like, yeah, let's fucking do it. Let's fucking shoot mechs at each other. Let's fucking go. That's what they did. That's what tanks were. Like, they weren't as, like, sci-fi or cool, but they were still fucking, like, goddamn mechs and tanks and shit. Like, it's crazy what they did. And I don't mean, like, crazy, like, whoa, bro, crazy. I mean, like, literally, like, nail in your fucking head, insane, oh, crazy, go nuts. Like, it's nuts what they did. I know, buddy. I know. Peanut butter, right? Peanut butter. Ah, to live like a dog. The greatest concerns I have in my life is where my next little swipe of peanut butter is going to come from. I've been a good little boy, haven't I? Don't I get some peanut butter? Yes, you do, my friend. Yes, you do. I heard another factor contributing to France's defeat was because they had ethnic Germans guarding the border. They just handed the keys. I mean, maybe. I don't know. There's so much, like, you know, mainland France technically surrendered during the Big Bad War. Well, I mean, I've spoken to French people about this moment, and there was this really. I used to live with a woman who moved over from France, and we got talking about World War II, and that moment, and she looked at me straight and she's like, just like, you British types, you will always do war because you don't have anything nice. Paris is beautiful. It is nice. We don't want it to be blown up. And I was just like, yeah, all right. Like, I buy that. Like, you're more willing to surrender and not do war and not, like, have everything blown up if it's nice. Right? Like, if the place looks nice and you've put a lot of work into it looking nice, then you're like, yeah, I don't want fucking tanks to come in and destroy the place. Like, if you're just a shithole, like, if you're just a dumb shithole and all your shit is stupid looking and nobody gives a shit, then yeah, I guess you'd be more willing to fucking blow it up. Fine. It's shitty anyway. But if it's nice, like, and the history of Paris alone, let alone, like, the rest of France, like, there are kings, like Louis the 14th is one of the famous ones, who, like, went through all of France and did, like, an entire beautification project. It was a major project that happened across France. Like, yeah, I don't think you want that blown up. Like, your entire fucking culture has, like, this civilization-built moment of beautification. Yeah, maybe I want that to not be blown up. Blitzkrieg is only an offensive doctrine. The distance between Moscow and Berlin was too much. Yeah, supply chains couldn't be maintained. Yeah, Blitzkrieg depended on tank and air support for sure. No, for sure, dude. Like, all of that is very true. Pevitin, a meth brand used by German soldiers during World War II. Yeah. Its peak, only 1/3 of German infantry divisions were mechanized, and 2/3 of all transport was with horses. Versailles was called the Jewel of Europe. Exactly. Like, exactly, dude. Exactly. And part, I think, and the Germans admitted it. Once they lost the Eastern Offensive, they really didn't expect the Russians to put up the fight that they did. Because I don't think... Because if you're a capitalist and you've been running this capitalist economy and you're trying, and not even like a full-blown capitalist economy either, like, you're running this kind of capitalist economy, well, when you come up against a communist economy where they can look at each other and just say, we're building tanks now, and that's what they do because they can and they should, right? Well, you lose, right? Like, this is the thing I always point out. I point this out to the really hard-nosed, like, communism has never been successful. I'm always like, successfully defeated the Nazis. Like, you literally have, like, the most powerful capitalist economy on the continent, which is the Nazis at the time, right? Fighting against the communists, Who won? The communists. I'd call that a victory for communism, buddy. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, communism has never worked. Beat the Nazis. I don't know what to tell you. Like, get wrecked. Like, get wrecked. Like, have you noticed how every single time capitalists have fought communists, the communists have won? Have you noticed how every single time that's happened, that's been the case? Like, even when they've completely leveled places. Fucking Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. Well, we all agree that like this war that we enacted, we lost, right? Like we didn't gain anything. We didn't win, right? So it looks like the communists win again, right? Like, and it just seems to be over and over and over again. We're told that communism has never been successfully tried or done. It's like, except every time it's been tried and beaten capitalists, you know, like the fucking Nazis. Anyway. Get rid of all this. Get rid of all this. Economists worry sanctions on Russian oligarchs may depress housing market to point where Canadians can afford to buy homes again. And of course from the Beaverton. With satire. They try to pretend the U.S. won the Vietnam War somehow. Yeah, I mean, like, well, what was so fucked up about Vietnam was like there never was any stated goals. Like literally, I think the closest they got to stating any kind of meaningful goals was to staunch the spread of communism. Like that's kind of it. And I'm more or less of the opinion that the Vietnam, like this whole thing happened here to prevent the Chinese from moving in. Like really, I think that's what it was all about. Is that like China was becoming like a fairly large military power, and they knew they couldn't directly go up against China even then. And so they blew this up so that China couldn't come in and just take it over and expand, you know, China. I've seen fairly credible information coming out of the State Department. There's a document called The Grand Chessboard. And the idea behind the invasion and destruction of Afghanistan and this whole region is so that Russia and China can't develop it, right? That they don't need a stated war goal, that the stated war goal is actually just blow the place up, right? Like, it doesn't matter if we lose, right? It doesn't matter if we win or lose, just as long as the Chinese and the Russians can't actually develop this territory. So we just blow the shit out of it. Don't forget the imaginary sea route from South Asia to the Far East. I don't actually know what you're talking about on that one, bud. Like, yeah, USA, we lost the war, but won all the battles. Yeah, I mean, like, this and it's this ethos. It's always how America has operated, right? Like, we went in there and blew everybody up, and so I guess we win, right? And like, they can't declare victory because they had to withdraw ultimately, and they didn't achieve anything, right? But like, and same with Iraq. Like, we've invaded it, we're occupying it, and so we win, right? And but like, so when this crisis resolves itself, everybody is going to be like, haha, Putin left, and so we won. When Putin is going to get literally everything he wants. Like, the reason why he fought the war, he's going to get everything he wants. And we're going to report on it as if it's like this crippling loss for him or something. Because we're dumb. So, new federal polling has come out. Essentially the same. Conservatives down. Makes sense. Conservatives are amidst a leadership convention, right? That usually happens amidst a leadership convention. There's usually a dip because people don't like the uncertainty of it. The 33% support for the Liberals is always what kills me. I'm always just like, really? We're still supporting like the blackface wearing Nazi grandfather, literally funding Nazis in Ukraine. I mean, that's why it's so important for the media to not actually report on facts or evidence or anything, right? Like, can you imagine if everybody in the populace actually understood and accepted that these liberals were funding Nazis? Like, do you think that it would still be 33% support? Well, I don't think so. Like, So I think there's a reason why we've got to like completely keep that one under our caps, right? That as long as the Canadians remain completely unaware, and you can't even say deluded, because I do think that it's mainly unaware. And I've had this conversation a couple of times now. I shouldn't say a couple of times, a lot. I'm having the same conversation over and over again, and it really is just disbelief, just an inability. Like it's I'm seeing people grapple and come on, like, and try to find any reason that makes any kind of sense, that they can get into their computational space so that they can somehow judo throw this evidence that we are funding Nazi groups. And the mental gymnastics. I've seen people say it's fine that we're funding Nazis because they're just fodder against Putin. I've seen that. That's a liberal justification. Every country has Nazis, right? Like, that's another liberal justification of what's going on. Even though we like very explicitly and very specifically trained and funded specifically the Azov Battalion, the Nazi groups that were there, right? What are some other justifications? Yeah, it's fine to fund Nazis because Nazis are better than Putin. Like, there's another liberal justification. That one is like deep brain rot. Like, your brain is rotten if you're saying that. Like, you don't know what Nazis are. You don't know what Nazism is. You don't care to know. All you know is that we good, they bad. Like, because all you do is watch Marvel movies and you don't have any fucking idea what's going on in the world at all. But like, even if I think people saw, like, what are they going to do? They're going to start voting conservative, right? Like, these conservatives are nightmare creatures, right? Like, sure, the conservatives didn't actively fund Nazis, but I would believe that they would, right? And like, the conservatives are just denying the existence of climate change completely. They literally, their social policies is abandon the entire populace, you know? And then you switch over to the NDP, and in terms of foreign policy, the NDP and the Liberals and the Conservatives are in complete lockstep with one another. Like, the Ukrainian crisis, like, they're all saying the same thing, right? And when you actually look at the NDP's, like, domestic idea, well, their idea is, oh yeah, those wealthy billionaires who have been making money hand over fist, we should tax them 1% more, right? Like, the NDP exists to protect the capitalist class. That they are the position that if everybody starts to fall in away from the Liberals and the Conservatives, well, then they'll fall onto an NDP that, instead of saying, hey, we should arrest these guys and put them in prison for their many crimes that are obvious and provable that we can show, like, in 5 minutes. Like, it's so observable. Instead of saying that we should seize the means of production and get rid of these capitalists, they're saying, we should raise taxes on the rich by 5%, which is still lower than the amount we were taxing them in 1996. You know? Like, we're really, really, like, the NDP could not be more tepid if they tried, man. Like, they could not be more tepid. This idea that we're gonna, like, yeah, that'll help fix the society. We'll let the psychopaths still be in charge. We'll just tax them at 1% more. That'll do it. How many of these liberals even know of Ukraine's Nazi collaboration past Stepan Bandera? Yeah, exactly. I do think that is part of it. And if you like, this is why I think if you confront liberals with this, their first place that they go is like, well, this is just like a smattering, right? Like, the Azov Battalion sounds like a bunch of guys in a clubhouse, right? Like, they don't understand how deep it's gotten. They don't like, literally, the Ukrainian military slogan is a Nazi slogan, right? Like, what is it? Glory to Ukraine, glory to us all. It's like a Nazi slogan, and people really really want to believe that, like, when people like me say, hey, we're funding Nazis, that it's like an incidental off on the path, like we found one Nazi in the entire Ukrainian military, right? Like that's the way they want to believe this story. And you really got to show them, like, no, bro, like we're talking about like a regime, like a major group of well-funded and well-backed neo-Nazis who have integrated themselves not only into the Ukrainian military but into the Ukrainian political society. And like it's crazy how impossible it is to avoid. You've got like NATO. Like NATO will go in and take pictures of the Ukrainian military and release pictures onto its own website. And these guys will be wearing the black sun, which is like a very well-known neo-Nazi symbol, right? And like that's NATO itself releasing these documents for the public to take a look at. And you're just like, yeah, the Ukrainian military, have you noticed? Hey, what's up with every single time we take a picture of anyone in the Ukrainian military, they have a Nazi symbol on them? Transylvanian, good to see. I don't know if I've ever seen you here before. I wanted to say I hate the conservatives in Canada are tainting the CPC acronym. I mean, the conservatives are very much like the only good thing that I will say about the conservatives here in Canada is that when compared to the liberals, they don't lie as much. They actually believe in the nonsense that they say, with the exception of someone like Doug Ford. Like, Doug Ford is the most dangerous conservative because he's figured out that all you got to do to get power is lie, right? We're so gullible. We're so incapable of deciphering between what is real and what is fake because of our Marvel brain rot. And we're so incapable of parsing what is real or what is fake that a guy like Doug Ford comes in and just lies. And you're just like, oh, okay. I believe him because that's who I am. The one thing USA has never been able to win is the peace. America is a parasite state, only exists to infect sovereign states and literally suck the life force out of the earth. Yeah. I mean, that's... These Ukraine Nazis are selling... Yeah, exactly. They're selling paraphernalia on Amazon. Isn't that fucking wild? Like, literally, you can go to Amazon. This is crazy to me, dude. So they Amazon removed Oliver Stone's movie. You can't see it. But you can go Azov. Here you go. First result. Fashion Azov defend Ukraine for men's black t-shirts. First result. Like, Nike shoes. Nazi paraphernalia. Like, what do we need to see at this stage in the game, do you wonder? Like, what do you think we need to see at this stage in the game to realize that we're the bad guys? Like, absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. Yeah, so, and what's dangerous, I think, about this new breed of conservative that is coming up is that I think these guys do understand what I just said. Like, Aaron O'Toole didn't lie. He pitched his position as nicely as it could be pitched, right? He put a nice spin on it, right? Presented it in its best possible light, but none of that is directly lying. Whereas I think this new group is going to understand that, oh, all we have to do is lie. We literally just need to lie. Oh, take a look at Doug Ford. Just lie, and you'll be fine, because Canadians are that gullible. Oh yeah, I saw his. I listened to his lecture about this. Why leaders lie to their people and the different types of lies, right? Like when lie and when the populace is willing to accept lies, and like the populace does like if you're a leader of a country and you tell a lie for expediency's sake, right? Like, I could sit you down and explain this. It would take us a week, or I could lie to you and we could be done with this in a minute and then we can move on. And then I could, like, redress it later on. The populace generally looks at that and goes like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, a lie of expediency. Like, yeah, well, we can get on board with that. Azov is taking over Ukraine like Hydra in that one Captain America movie, you know, in the elevator. Yeah, I mean, it is, like, I'm seeing a lot of that with Harry Potter. Like, some of the leftists that I follow will use, like, Harry Potter analogies, and which they themselves are like, this is so fucking stupid that we've got to put it this way, but here it is. But it works, because literally the only thing that these Marvel brain rot kiddies read is, like, Harry Potter and comic books. And so if you don't talk it to them that way, then they're never going to figure it out. It's so disappointing how so many Western online leftists, even ones I previously thought see through the imperialist BS, have fallen for the mainstream media propaganda over this conflict. Absolutely. Absolutely. People like people like Hassan. Like, Hassan does not report on the Donbass war, right? Like, he's willing to go and talk about the coup. He's willing to talk about the NATO encroachment and all that kind of stuff. But if you're not talking about the Donbass war, then you can always fall back into the position that what Putin did was a crime or somehow evil or illegal even, right? Because once you start talking about the Donbass war, it becomes much more difficult to actually have that position. Like, even if you still are against the idea that Putin shouldn't have invaded or all that kind of stuff, well, then that means you have to concede that it's acceptable that Nazis are bombarding Russians on your border, right? Like, are you sure? Are you sure you're going to concede that? Like, it seems... so I think there's a reason. Like, I think there's a reason why leftists can't go that way. Their brain won't let them do it because they understand that is, like, and I'm not saying they've, like, intellectually processed this and drawn it on a chalkboard and made a decision. I'm just saying that everyone has their own home bias. Everybody has that kind of thing built in them. That to pivot, like, and the Donbass war is a pivot point. It's a point in which once you start to accept it into your brain space and into your heart and into your soul, into your root and into your body, once you start to understand, like, oh shit, Nazis cooed the Ukrainian government, and then rolled up on the Donbass region and started shelling civilians. 14,000 civilians dead since 2014. And they've been doing that for 8 years on the Russian border. Like, what's Putin supposed to do? Like, what's Putin supposed to do? I really don't think you can, and if all you're going to do is ignore that, then you can make whatever claim you like about Putin's actions. Even if you accept the coup, even if you accept the Azov battalion, right? You can still say, yeah, but Putin shouldn't have invaded. Like, there's all kinds of things he could have done. Well, okay. So he should just let Russians, including Russian civilians, incidentally, like literal, like with Russian passports, Russian civilians, he should just let Nazis keep shelling Russians on his border? Really? You think so? While simultaneously, Ukraine is moving towards joining NATO? I mean, there just comes a point where there's a breaking point here. Like, there's a point where it pivots, where it just becomes too much to accept, right? Like, you're telling me that if you're the leader of a country and there are Nazis on the other side of the border killing the people who are culturally part of your society, that you're just going to be like, no, it's normal, there's an invisible line there. We can't do anything about it, you guys, there's an invisible line there. Yeah, I'm trying to do it diplomacy, but they're not talking to me. But I guess if I cross that little line, then I'm the bad guy then. So no, we can't do it. Like, I think you're fucking stupid if this is the way you're talking. Like, I really do. Like, I think that you have watched too many Marvel movies. The brain rot that exists in your brain, you're too far gone. Like, and a lot of leftists in this conflict have really revealed themselves to be just like pseudo leftists, right? Okay, buddy, you want to come up? Wow. No. Well, I don't have any more peanut butter for you, bud. You're out of peanut butter. Yeah, and, like, I'm talking about, like, people who I generally like. Like, I like generally, like, Second Thought but his videos on this conflict have been the most tepid I've seen, right? Like, nobody wants to take a strong position and defend it, except this guy, right? I'm willing to take a strong position and defend it because I've got the source documents, right? And I took the time to actually know what's going on. And if Putin wants to defend his own people against Nazi encroachment, Seems reasonable. Does it suck? Yeah, obviously. Right? Obviously. Which is why we shouldn't be fucking funding Nazis. Right? Like, if you actually genuinely think that what you are seeing is horrible and you wish it wouldn't happen and it should stop, well, the first thing that you should demand of your own government is that they stop participating in it. And the first thing that they should do is stop funding Nazis. Straight up. Like, stop funneling money into Nazi groups who then turn around and kill Russians. Like, this isn't fucking brain rocket science surgery, right? Like, it's you don't have to be fucking like Tony Stark genius. Like, you don't need to have that shit going on. You just need to accept that Russians are also people who shouldn't be shelled by Nazis, right? Lord Assault, don't know if I've ever seen you around here, bud. Good to see you. In my honest opinion, the best claim so far was Putin is worse than Hitler because Hitler didn't use chemical weapons. First of all, Hitler used chemical weapons. Like, come on. And has Putin used chemical weapons? Where? When? The people I'm extremely disappointed on the online left is the Majority Report. Who's the Majority Report again? Bad Empanada. I was always kind of soft on Bad Empanada in the first place. Adam Something is a straight up imperialist. Like, Adam Something's a straight up imperialist. He's just going to find any excuse he can to be like Americans are right. Like Adam Something, in my view, is like Jon Stewart, right? Jon Stewart's really, really good domestically. That he'll critique domestically very strongly. But when it comes to foreign policy, he's essentially an imperialist. Right, Juan Guaido is the leader, the real leader of Venezuela, like that kind of garbage, right? And Stewart's happy to just toe the imperialist line. It's probably a big reason why he's allowed to continue doing what he does, right? Ukraine's Azov brigade shelled residents of Donetsk city center. Dozens of civilians murdered. Civilian vehicles and public transport was targeted. Happened today. Yep. We reported on that a little bit earlier. I don't know how to pronounce your name, bud. And I don't think I've ever seen you here, so good to see you. And yeah, please come in and let us know more about that. Like, I just showed a Patrick Lancaster reported on that earlier today. Yeah, like the battle line is like the front line of this war is actually Donetsk city. Like, it always has been the case. Like, before YouTube removed Russell Bentley was reporting on the conflict the whole time, and somebody has actually backed up his stuff, so I still have access to it if I want to take a look. And it's shocking. It's shocking that we're just not supposed to know about the Donbass war. We're just not supposed to talk about it. And even leftists, and even the people who are willing to say, like, yep, Nazis couped the government and we funded those Nazis. Okay, and then, oh, you don't want to talk about that because then you might actually have to look at Putin and be like, yeah, I mean, I guess. Like, I'll restate it over and over and over again to make it as clear as possible so no one can misunderstand me. I think Putin didn't have a choice, right? His choices were let Nazis continue killing Russians, including Russian civilians, on the Russian border while they joined NATO, a force that exists explicitly to destroy Russia, so that they could roll fucking missiles right up against the border of Russia and point them right at Moscow. Option one. I think if you accept that, you're fucking out of your mind. Like, absolutely, like, brain rotted, like, where's Tony Stark in the middle of this fucking thing. Option two, well, you're looking at it. This is option two. So, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? Does it suck? Yeah, of course it sucks. How we should if only there was something we could have done to have prevented this before it happened. There was something we could have done. Right? But of course the brain rot Marvel kids will be like, I want to go back in time and kill Putin. I'll go back in time and kill Putin when he's a baby, and that'll stop this whole thing from happening. Yeah! Right? No, there was a very easy solution. If you really wanted to have prevented this conflict, the thing to have done was to not fund neo-Nazis. Very straightforward. Like, very straightforward. You want to prevent this kind of conflict from occurring in the future? The number one thing you should be demanding of your own country is stop funding Nazis. It's very easy to not do. It's very easy to do. Just don't do it. Just when you go, I've got money and I should fund these Nazi groups, just go, wait, no, I'm not supposed to fund Nazis. It's extremely easy to do. It's extremely easy to do. And if we wanted to really be like a force for peace in the world, probably not funding Nazis is step one. The both sidesing and the Russia-China are imperialist narrative, wonderfully debunked by Ben Norton recently. Ben Norton has been great. So has been the Gray Zone, Jimmy Dore. There have been voices who have really reaffirmed themselves over this period of time. Voices that I was starting to get a little loose on because of the COVID conversation and the ongoing sort of nature of that have really like immediately tightened up and just been like, nope, we fucking are on this story. Right? And Ben Norton's one of them. Max Blumenthal, the Gray Zone, and Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore has been absolutely laying it out, man. Like no bullshit. Like straight up, just like we're funding Nazis here. Like Jimmy Dore has been so on point that he's been teaching me shit about what's been going on. So like, go watch Jimmy Dore's stuff because his stuff is top level. Yeah, this is when Adam Something said Russian imperialism is worse than U.S. imperialism. It's like, what an embarrassing thing to say. Like, literally, we invaded Iraq on false pretenses and are still there. Like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck right up. Like, so fucking stupid. Oh yeah, TYT has been full imperialist for a while now, though. This isn't. Bad Empanada's opinion of the Russian-Ukraine conflict and AES aren't that great, but other than that, he's fine in my opinion. I don't know though. Somebody sent a Bad Empanada when I was doing the Uyghur genocide stuff. Somebody sent me a Bad Empanada video to do a debunk of, and I just decided not to because his take was so kind of cringy. Honestly, like what they had done or what he had done. What the CIA asset, what's his fucking stupid dumbass name? The dumbass that we all know with the glasses, the German psychopath. That's going to kill my brain. Anyway, he has released documents of, like, what the police and military are supposed to do when they have Uyghurs in their situation. I'm like, it literally sounds like any military document I've ever seen in my life. And Bad Empanada was like looking at the screen being like, think about how they could abuse this. And it's like so childish in my view. Like when cultures commit to doing genocides, when cultures commit to doing these sorts of illicit acts, they don't bullshit it. They do it in the open, right? Like there's no secret organization or secret documents where they're planning a Uyghur genocide to kill 8 million people. When we Canadians enacted the residential school system, we did it in public. We passed legislation through the parliament. It's written down. You can read it. When the enslavement of the black population happened by the Western capitalists and the genocide of the First Nations people happened, it was planned. We have the documents. It was well written, well argued. When Adolf Hitler committed the genocide against the Jews, it was very well documented. He had a book called Mein Kampf where he said he was going to do it, and then he did it, right? Like this idea that we found a document where they're talking about what to do with Uyghur prisoners. Well, what should you do with Uyghur prisoners? Shouldn't you have a policy? Shouldn't you write that down? But they could abuse it. Look, dude, if they were actually pursuing a path of genocide against the Uyghurs, they would plan it. We would see them talking about it, right? The claim that's coming from people like Bad Empanada is that the Chinese are committing a genocide without talking about it. It's childish. I just can't take that position seriously. And the idea that we're all supposed to like hinge our opinion of a nation on, well, they could. Shut up. Like, that's baby talk. You're just a babbling little baby. Like, when cultures commit to genocide, they plan it. It's done in the open. You can see it with your fucking eyes. It's not a secret. There's no hidden cabal or hidden underground society. or there's no like how do you kill 8 million people without talking about it? Like, and then on top of that, like, where's the refugee crisis? Like, where is all of this crazy shit? Like, it's just so fucking annoying. So when we get talking about like Bad Empanada, I'm basically just like, I think he's trying. Like, I really do. Like, I don't really like ragging on leftists in this way, but I mean, right now I'm kind of getting to it because I'm like, it's getting pretty obvious. And I do think that Bad Empanada is trying to fight the good fight. I just think that like on the China one, he really let his kind of home bias take him away, and let his reason, he put his reason aside for it. Because like, where's the plan, you know? Majority Report. Oh yes, Majority Report. Sam Cedar. Yeah, no, Sam Cedar has always been liberal. Like every so often somebody comes in here and starts railing against Majority Reporter Sam Cedar, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, these guys are at least they're consistent. At least they're consistent, and I don't think they're bullshitting, right? Like, that's the other part of it. Like, TYT, I think, are full of shit. I think that they're just bullshitters, right? That their trajectory is obviously like, oh, we got into the Democratic Party and suddenly our entire narrative shifted. It's like, yeah, because you're full of shit. Whereas, like, Sam Cedar, like, I think that Sam Cedar believes what he says, and moreover, and this is difficult for people to really respect and understand when I talk about Sam Cedar, I think that his positions are not irrational. I think there is a type of reason, right? There is a rationale behind the things that he believes. Do I agree with them? No. But are they like hysterically based, or are they based in like some kind of like pounding the pulpit, like we're going to show everybody in the world the CIA's in on this, and they're turning the frogs gay, so that when you get a frog in your society, it's turning you gay, and that's why there's all these queers around, right? Like if like he's not doing that shit. Like, he's not doing that shit. So Adam Guy's a former alt-righter, massive lib, and Russiaphobe. I agree that Bad Empanada's position has shocked me. I had big hopes for Second Thought and Hakeem. Sadly, both have been tepid at best, and kind of missed the point. I think that's accurate, especially with Second Thought. Like, Second Thought's videos have essentially been like, cooler heads should prevail. Like, whoa, let's just take a breath. Like, really, I take a look at Second Thought's videos on this, and it's less about information. It's less about taking a position and defending it. And it's more about just being like, hey, we should, like, whoa, calm down. Like if Second Thought had have been just like a guru who like walked into the room and was like, everyone, we should just take a deep breath and out and breathe. Really find your root and your center. Don't worry about the thoughts that cloud your head. Those will just go into this space. Just release them. Just find your core and your center and breathe. Oh, and breathe. Like, if that had been his video, it would have been the same. It would have been like, that's the video. Like, that's it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I want to be really clear on this. There's nothing wrong with that. I just kind of wish that Second Thought and Hakeem had to come out and just been like, we don't really know much about the situation. Like, war is bad. I'm sure it's much more complex than we're being led to believe. We don't know anything about the situation. So, we'll get back to you. I really wish they had done that. Instead of trying to maintain this sort of... Because they've got so many viewers. Like, Second Thought has over 1 million viewers now. And Hakeem, I believe, is over 100,000. Right? And they're doing, like, a podcast together and all this kind of stuff. And so I feel like... this has given them this position of status where they feel they need to, we are left, like, we are the bastions of socialism and communism in the conversation. We're here to present a reasonable socialism. And, oh, the Putin situation is here, you guys. So just everyone, as this unfolds, we need to remember to do it together. And we don't, like, I just wish they had been like, yeah, we don't know. We don't know what's happening. We're probably being lied to. We'll get back to you as we figure it out, okay, guys? Just calm the fuck down. Calm the fuck down. I would have appreciated that a lot more. Like, people should be able to admit that they don't know what's going on. You know? And I think that should be okay. Honestly, I think it should be totally fine for someone like Second Thought or Hakeem to release a video about a major fucking world event like this and just outright say, like, we don't actually know what's happening. Like, this is what the Americans are saying. Like, we've all seen that. But we don't really know what's going on the other side of the conversation. And nor are we going to be able to figure that out in, like, a week where we, like, hammered together this video to talk about it. I just wish they had said, we don't know. Because they don't. Like, they don't. Right? That it takes a madman like me, who's been paying attention to this situation for a while now, to say something ridiculous and really come down the pipe. I suspect they'll get it right in the end, though. Like, they're very clever people. Hakeem especially, I really like his critical analysis. Second Thought is more of a theory guy, but Hakeem is more... He's willing to understand a boots on the ground sort of situation, which is, I think, what my position is. I keep thinking people are forgetting a guy named Adam's last name when they say Adam something. Yeah, TYT went full imperial. They've been full imperialists for a while yet. Not yet, but U.S. are trying to set up the narrative so they can initiate a false flag like they did in Syria when Assad started winning. Yeah, that's for sure happening. The biological lab narrative, where I love it. It's Russia took over biolabs that we had, which were completely not dangerous at all and used only for research, but we're afraid the Russians are going to use those to unleash a deadly poison in the populace. So, like, which is it? Like, the biolabs are not dangerous, but with the Russians, they are extremely dangerous. So, like, which of these... Like, it's so obviously padding us and getting us ready for a false flag event, right? That's not my claim. Seen this insanity on Twitter. Lord Assault. I love that name, by the way. If you feel I have misconstrued your claim or something like that, I didn't mean to. I'll put it that way. So just reassert what your claim was, and I'm sure we agree. Yeah, I agree that Sam Cedars always been a liberal, but he was most progressive liberals and cared for facts. Yeah, that's the truth. Like, and moreover, I do think Cedar can be moved. You know, that he cares about evidence, which I think that's what matters to me more than anything. That sure, he's still a liberal, sure, he has these positions and all this, but I think if you show him evidence, he moves. And that's what matters the most, I think. Like, is he suddenly going to become a fucking communist? No. But, like, I think if you showed him some real documentation about something serious, he would take it seriously. He wouldn't just dismiss it because it didn't fit with the narrative that he currently believed in that moment. Ugh. Yeah, he's a sock dem, yeah. I not spending too much time on Sam Cedar, honestly. Like, in my view, what I really like... here, I just said I'm not going to spend too much time on Sam Cedar, but the thing I like about Sam Cedar is that he talks to interesting people who don't usually get a voice. You know, his interviews are really what I think give him a lot of credibility. Because even though he is like a liberal or a social democrat or any of that kind of, like, that sort of wheelhouse, I do think he's quite sympathetic to the left. Like, I do. I think he would be willing to actually sit down and have a serious conversation with someone like me. Like, someone who is a communist and says he's a communist, right? And I don't think that he would fall... Like, he might ask those stupid questions, you know, like, well, they say communism's never worked. Doesn't communism do all the violence and all that kind of stuff? Like, I'm sure that he would ask those questions, but I don't think he would ask them in a way to dismiss. You know what I mean? And it's because of that. It's because I think he has that sort of sympathetic view of positions that are more to his left. That gives him an awful lot of credibility, in my view. He hasn't just shut the door. You know what I mean? Whereas someone like... I'm trying to think about a really good example. Someone like Vosh, right? Like, Vosh has shut the door on anything to the left of him, right? Like, his sort of... I don't even know where to peg Vosh on the political spectrum, but he's an imperialist for sure. Like, definitely a pseudo-progressive. Like, he only really espouses pseudo-doctrine, like pseudo-progressive doctrines so that he can affirm his imperialist perspective. And anything to the left of him, he considers to be just nutty. And so it's just like, well, I don't really know why I should care what a pedophile thinks, but okay. Also, what did Hakeem say? You know what's funny, actually? I've been talking about Hakeem like this way, but I don't recall actually seeing any of his videos offhand. So I'm going to retract my statements on Hakeem because I feel like I may have lumped him in with Second Thought just because they've done that podcast together, and that's not fair. That's not fair. I shouldn't guilt by association. So I recant on what I said about Hakeem and can be convinced otherwise. Goodbye political dissidents who were the first to be sent to concentration camps. Goodbye people who were sheltered, the previously mentioned groups. Yeah. I mean, if there is any sunshine to be seen on that point, Mocked, it's that my channel just got monetized in the middle of all of this. Right? Everything I've just said, right? Channel got monetized. So they're not... And people like Jimmy Dore are still going on. People like... There are still dissidents, right? And they're still allowing dissident voices. And they're still platforming them. And they're still allowing that to occur. It's... Very specifically, I think their censorship justification has been Russia, that Russian television. And if you're a Russian, if you've received any funding from Russia, we're going to shut that down. And that's still scary. I'm still opposed to that. I still think it's a bad idea for very clear reasons. Like, I don't know why we should trust the people who are funding Nazis to be able to tell us what we should and should not watch, or where to get our information from. Or who to listen to, but at least that's more clear. Like, at least it's like a clear, like, Russia. We are fighting Russia. No Russia. Russia bad. Russia. But if you say all the things that the Russians say, but you're like I am, like a Canadian, like I live in Canada, I'm not connected to any of these institutions or anything, then you're off to the races, right? So... I'm always trying to be fair, and I'm always trying to see what's actually going on. Like, I don't want to get caught in a hysteria either. You know, I don't want to start getting caught in a hysteria of just like, oh shit, all dissension is getting cut out. Everything is just going to be the pro-imperialist line. If you stand up and say anything, they're going to get you. All that kind of stuff. And like, if that were actually true, I think that Jimmy Dore would already be done, right? Like, Jimmy Dore would already be done. So I think he's my canary in the coal mine. As long as Dore is doing what he's doing, as long as the gray zone is permitted to exist, right? Then, but we're definitely getting pushed. The line is getting pushed up, right? It's got a very like first they came for Chris Hedges and we didn't say anything because we were in favor of the Iraq War, and then we didn't say anything about the Russians getting cut out and like Russian television getting cut out and Lee Camp, Chris Hedges again. I can't believe Chris Hedges ate it both times. I can't believe Chris Hedges ate it both fucking times. Like, that's so... If anything convinces you that God has a sense of humor, it should be that. That fucking Chris Hedges lost his job at the New York Times because he dissented against the Iraq War. And now here he is a second time, finding his voice and finding a platform on Russian television, the RT America, and they get rid of it because of his dissension against the conflict here. I can't believe it happened to him twice. Poor guy, man. Poor guy. Just fighting the good fight. Fighting the good fight. God bless his heart. But you got like Lee Camp in there. You got Richard Wolf's in there, right? And so like that's scary. It's scary to see people who I consider to be like my mentors and heroes, people who I pay attention to. I've read literally everything Chris Hedges has ever written. I've read a lot of Richard Wolf's work. Like I've listened to a lot of their lectures and a lot of stuff. So much so that I feel I could argue their position, right? And just the idea that those guys have just been, nope, you're done, and they kind of got to start over again. That's scary. That's scary to see that shit happen, man. That's scary. Invading Ukraine, Russia is justified to feel threatened. Ambassador Lawa Newsnight on Channels Television is good perspective. 58 minutes, so not for now, yeah. I've unsubscribed to many commentators in the last couple of weeks. The copium huffers have reached a crazy level. For sure, dude. For sure. I highly recommend checking out the video that Brian Berletic did with Danny Haifong. Danny Haifong is a great voice. Yeah. Danny Haifong, and here, I'm going to look that up. Probably not watch it on stream, but Danny Haifong's really good, man. He tried. What I like. Excuse me. What I like about Danny Haifong is that he seems. Oh yeah, both these guys. Both these guys. This Brian. I can never remember this guy's voice, but anytime I see his face, I'm like, yep, this guy. This guy knows what's up. Like they're very specific, and they want to know what's going on, right? And they're not approaching things like a lot of times I think commentators approach things with a very like, we're going to dunk on this or we're going to dismiss it, right? And it's like, that's not the way to work. The way to actually work is to be like, okay, is this actually like, is this actually information, right? Like, is this actually information? And if it is information, then you have to include it. And what I mean by is it information is it a fact? Like, is it well sourced? Is it a source document, right? And is it and if it is, well, that you have to accept it. Like, you have to accept it. You can't just like shrug your shoulders and be like, oh, okay, like I choose to ignore this. And I think that there's a lot of commentators that just kind of choose to ignore a lot of stuff because it doesn't fit with their mindset. I just don't. I can't tolerate that for myself. Yeah, I suspect Danny Haifong and Brian Berletic have been really good. Like they were right about the Uyghur genocide stuff. Like I feel like the people who were right about the Uyghur genocide, you gotta go in with them, right? Like I was with those guys. Like my channel was going through that with those guys, right? And I was very small. Like I think it was only like 500 people, 500 subscribers at that point. But I could feel the heat. Like I could feel the heat, man. I took a lot of heat for that position on the Uyghur genocide. And if I was feeling that, these guys were feeling it for sure. But they were right. Right? And my position is if someone's going to take a stand on that issue and be right, you gotta listen to him. You gotta listen to him, you know? Like, that's a really bold thing to do. Bad Empanada's video on how Manifest Destiny inspired the Nazis is an important video. More people need to learn about this. And this is the kind of thing with Bad Empanada. Like, he does good work, you know? And that's why I think my position on him is that he's trying. And I can see how, like me, he's just a guy in a room, right? Like, he doesn't have, like, a team or anything. Like he's kind of just speaking from the heart. And so it's like, you know, it's really hard to hate on somebody when that's sort of what's going on with them. Especially as like, yeah, like he does stuff that's really good too. So BE has a big blind spot when it comes to China. We're talking about Brian Berletic here. Now apparently Russia too. Or Bad Empanada. Oh, and for sure he's excellent on South America and decolonization. I mean, he's in Argentina, right? Adrian Zenz. You got it, Major. Thanks, bud. The first thing that you'd do if you wanted to do that is turn the majority of the population against the ethnic group, stoke animosity and hatred and fear, kind of like the U.S. has done, yeah? Of course Vosh has the worst take. I mean, of course he does. I hated that it jumps down like that. But watching CGTN and RT on Odyssey for information yet? Oh, we got Barnabas coming in. He wants me to say something about... yeah, jeez. What do we got? Richard Zussman on Twitter. British Columbia becomes first jurisdiction to tie minimum wage increase to inflation. There you go. On June 1st, minimum wage will go up to 15.65, up 45 cents. I mean, that's the solution, frankly. It's not going to last. It's not going to last. There's no way that's going to last, right? And tying the minimum wage to inflation, though, like, you want to make sure that oh, hold on. Sorry, guys. Getting an entanglement happening here. Don't want to destroy my... What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Get out of here. Cords caught in wheels. Interesting. Like, this is what you do, right? Like, you want to dissuade politicians from using inflationary measures and protect your populace. Well, and honestly, I think that you should tie a ton of stuff to inflation. You should tie a ton of stuff to that kind of going on, right? Like, you want to mess with your economy, you want to inflate your economy, well, you can't bail on your populace, right? So, an interesting development. I don't think it lasts. Voice of Russia, good radio station. Schrodinger's Biolabs, yeah. He actually said if we have to choose between an ANCAP world and a communist world, I'd pick that world, even if we achieved 1% of the world would be infinitely better than an ANCAP world. I don't know who you're referring to here. You're kind of correct on your assumptions. Second thought is more theory. Hakeem calls out actual events and expects world stuff. He's also a doctor. I didn't know that. My biggest gripe with JD, I assume that's Jimmy Dore, is I don't trust anyone who associates with white nationalists like Tucker Carlson anyway. This includes Glenn Greenwald. I think that Jimmy Dore's position on this, just like Glenn Greenwald's position on this, is fairly well articulated and well justified, which is to say, Tucker Carlson was a outright explicit gateway to speak to the President of the United States. That Donald Trump had said on many occasions that he watched Tucker Carlson's show. On many occasions he had said that. And insiders had confirmed it. So here is the President of the United States of America, arguably one of the most powerful men in the world, admitting that he's watching every single night this show. I think you're absolutely crazy to think that you shouldn't try to get on that show. I would go on that show. I would for sure. Like if I could somehow get on Tucker Carlson's show and talk directly to the President of the United States of America, I would. Absolutely. In a heartbeat. I wouldn't even think about it. I worry that what is happening with Jimmy Dore and Glenn Greenwald is that kind of tribalistic, like, Glenn Greenwald, I think, is sort of a moderate right-winger at the end of the day. Like, if I were to really critique him as in a larger sort of sense, I would say that he's sort of a moderate right? And I think that might actually be true as well of Jimmy Dore. Like, Jimmy Dore's kind of moderate, like, waffles sort of left-right, right? And I don't think that's enough to exclude them from the conversation or think that they're crazy or think that they shouldn't be listened to or any of that kind of stuff, right? Like, and just because they're going on Tucker Carlson's show, that's not very convincing for me. Like, as somebody who calls himself a leftist, someone who calls himself a communist, I'm like, I don't know. Like, somebody invites me on their show, I'm gonna do it. Especially if I get to talk to the fucking President of the United States. Like, and Tucker Carlson's the largest. Like, it really is like Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, right? Like, Tucker Carlson's the biggest show outside of Joe Rogan. And I don't think that I hold it against them for wanting to talk to that audience. And also, I'm really of the opinion that, like, we should be talking to everybody. And it's because it is a big, like, there are big conversations going on. And we really should, like, while communists and leftists, I think, need to create their own groups to be able to build something that is resilient, certainly, where we understand that we're talking with allies and we're having that kind of thing. I don't think that precludes the idea that we go out in the world and spread information where we can. And I don't know, especially my recent experience, like, getting this channel monetized while I was saying what I was saying amidst the kind of shit that's going on. This society does still believe in a freedom of speech doctrine. They're not including it to the Russians anymore, right? That's been excluded. But the fact, like, and some of the stuff that Carlson has said, even recently, is interesting. And kind of flies in the face of what you would expect if the society was attempting to really clamp down and follow a more censorship line. Because at the end of the day, this whole thing is fucking complex as shit. It's complex as shit. Nobody knows what's going on, really. Nobody knows what's happening, really. And I do think that the wisest position is hear what everybody has to say, kind of discern, figure it out. That the last thing you want to do is create weird little echo chambers where people can't have their views challenged, where no new information can penetrate or come in. Because if you do that, then you end up with Rachel Maddow, right? And if you ask me, who do I actually think is worse between Rachel Maddow and Tucker Carlson? I think Rachel Maddow is worse than Tucker Carlson. Because Rachel Maddow is just like, Russiagate. Like, that's Rachel Maddow. And I'm like, not interested. Like, not interested at all. Anyway, I get into hot water when I start talking about Dorr and Greenwald going on Tucker Carlson. Because I really am of the opinion, like, why shouldn't they? Go for it. Like, I'm not going to guilt by association these guys. And those people are still part of their society, right? Just because Fox sucks, right? And it does. Just because Fox sucks and its viewers suck, and like the whole thing sucks, and everybody's just like, oh my God, I cannot believe these guys are here. Well, they are. Too bad, right? It's part of your society. It's part of your culture. And like, you can't just push them into a box and hope that they're going to stay there, right? You can't just be like, we're better than them. They're just a basket of deplorables. Like, you got to talk to these guys. And somebody like Jimmy Dore is like the perfect guy. He's just like an everyman, just shooting the shit. Like, yeah, this is what I think. This is what I think about the world. Yeah, what are you going to do? It's outrageous, isn't it? Right? And Greenwald's very similar in that regard. Hey, Cotton, how you doing, bud? Finished a job interview. How'd it go, bud? Yeah, minimum wage still too low for sure. Lee feels like he lost 8 years of his life. Dude, I think that Lee Camp is the one who really, like, I take a look at Richard Wolff, and like, Richard Wolff was like doing this because it made sense for what he was doing, but I don't think it's like an enormous blow for him. Same thing with Chris Hedges. I think Chris Hedges is probably like, well, that's unfortunate. I've experienced this several times before, right? Like, and he has experienced it several times before. Lee Camp, like, Lee Camp was there for 8 years, had built like a whole community. It was doing something really intrinsic and important. This is the first time this has happened to him. Of course it's going to blow him up. Of course it is, man. He's going to come back stronger. Check some of the comments. I think it's time we start tying politician wages to the minimum wage. I mean, that's the only comment. Oh. Yeah. It's all just the rabble. How about we tie disability benefits to the minimum wage and inflation too? Yeah. Like, the rabble. The rabble's always going to say what the rabble says. It's always, these people should just get better jobs. Anyway. With inflation about to hit hard in the West right now, it's probably going to come in real clutch for a lot of people. That's true. That is true for sure. Minimum wage increasing 70 cents in April, getting us to 13. I'm still more an advocate for Vietnam's style price controls than letting inflation dictate the direction of the economy. I mean, we could simply control this inflation. Like, inflation occurs because you print a bunch of money, which we do all the time, which is completely fine, but you don't tax it away, right? Like, that's what causes inflation. If you just create a bunch of money and then you don't tax away the same amount of money. And the only place it makes sense to tax the money away is from the worthless pools of capital that pool up in a capitalist society. So that means the capitalists, right? But we're not going to do that because our leadership is incomprehensibly in the pocket of these guys. I was referring to the Sam Cedar about the Ant Camp versus communism. Oh, yeah. They've had socialists on Tucker Carlson with the aim to discredit them and failed, by the way. Yeah, just because you're on there doesn't equal bad person. Yeah, I think that's right. And, like, at least we know that, we know what Tucker Carlson's game is, right? Like, and so when they get socialists on there, like, this is what's so funny. They bring socialists on thinking they can discredit them, but we know who Tucker is. Like, we know he's not going to be nice to socialists or anything. So, like, they go on there and they're prepared, right? They're ready. And like, the capitalists are pretty aware that I think this is why they've given Tucker kind of the go-ahead to be a little softer on the, like, socialist kind of narrative, because they know if they take like a hard line, no, capitalism is the only way, well, then they'll lose, right? Because they have lost that, right? If you're under the age of 30, you think capitalism is bad. Like, that's just the stats. It's just how it is. Funny that you talk about Trump listening to Fox News. I learned today Trump made a CRT policies based on Fox News called to ban CRT because of a guy that was on Fox News. Yeah. No, Trump is very dumb. Like, that's... he's not a smart man. Like, he's a very silly person. And it's really intense that he's, like, going to be the president again. It was an advancement in my current job, went very well. Basically a more specialized promotion. Well, hopefully it comes with a more specialized pay increase. As soon as the NDP is voted out here in BC, the Liberals are back. The minimum wage tied to inflation will end. That's probably right, Branwyn. I'd say that that's accurate. Because, like, although the NDP still poll fairly well, like, they still do okay in BC. We'll see. The demonizing of everything Russian will most likely bring a string of lawsuits to come. The bans inflicted on people affected by nations not legally at war. Yeah, war reparations. In fact, when you make money, it comes with... here is interest on that money. Yeah. Oof. I gotta run off and use the washroom, guys, but I don't actually have a video ready to go. That's annoying. Did I play the video that I had already? Yeah, I did. Yeah, here's something to read. Sorry, guys, chair stream for a minute. I know, buddy. I know. Thanks, buddy. You got him. Chair stream. This is the high quality content you all sign up for, right? I'm a professional, goddammit. Ugh. I really don't want the BC Libs to ever get back in. I wonder how long the NDP have. I mean, most governments in Canada last about 16 years. That's kind of the life cycle of a Canadian government, because we're very, very fickle, and we have kind of swallowed whole the idea that oh, we'll get a new guy in and that'll be better. And it's just like, it doesn't really work out that way. It's not really how things happen. But 16 years, so you got like the first term is like revolution. Second term is their plateau, right? Third term is their kind of decline. Right? And while that decline occurs, there's a new guy that comes in, revolution! And then the new guy gets in, and it's the same cycle. Because at the end of the day, these people are still bound to the system that produces them, right? And the system that produces them is a neoliberal death cult. Like, it's not going to allow anybody to actually foment anything serious and any kind of major revolution. And anything that's put forward... For example, this tying the minimum wage to inflation, that's going to be temporary. That's not going to last, right? That's just to get through the headline cycle, just so that people, while we go through this inflationary measure period, people will be like not completely, totally fucked over and abandoned for these guys are reactionaries. Like, all they're doing is reacting to what is happening to them, right? And some places are better at reacting. Like, oh shit, huge inflation crisis. This is abandoning huge segments of the population. Well, a good thing to do to react to this inflation crisis is to tie the minimum wage to inflation. So that as it goes up, so too does the minimum wage. But this comes with its own series of pitfalls, right? Like, just because your minimum wage is going up with inflation doesn't mean that the price of it doesn't mean that the price of goods are going to stabilize or anything like this. It doesn't mean that rent is going down. It doesn't mean that any of that is under control, right? So it's like this little tiny staunching of a major problem that is still going to create enormous concerns in the society, because ultimately what's going to cause the true inflationary death spiral is the existence of the billionaire class. That you've got billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of fictitious capital that's sitting inert doing nothing. Right? I can't think of a better way to just destroy an economy than just take the vast majority of that economy, extract it from the real actual goings on of the society, put it off in a corner, and pretend like that's what matters the most. Right? Which is exactly what we've done. Right? Line goes up, stonks, right? Like the bonds and treasuries and all this shit. That's just fictitious nonsense. It's not actual production. It's not actually doing anything or creating anything, right? And as the extraction process continues, because that's all it is, it's an extraction process. That means that the people who are actually needing the currency in order to buy real things, food, shelter, right, are no longer able to do that. And that's a byproduct of the natural structure of the system itself, right? So tying your minimum wage to inflation is going to be nice for the people who are at minimum wage for a moment, but the inflation is going to get so outrageous that literally the wages will be like $1 million an hour. Like it's just going to go, and no one's going to be able to reasonably pay it because of the inflationary nature of the system that we're in. And I am worried at this stage in the game that we're caught in a spiral, that it is actually a death spiral that we won't be able to control for much longer. And I don't think that there's anything that we can do about it, because the heart of the problem, it doesn't matter if we raise the interest rate. It doesn't matter if we do these things, because the beating heart of the problem is that there's a tiny oligarchy who is extracting wealth from the populace while doing absolutely nothing valuable whatsoever, right? And that's going to collapse the economy no matter how you slice it. No matter how you slice it. Electoralism is an endless treadmill. Yeah, for every step forward, there's one step back a few election cycles later. Yeah, that's the plan, too. All FDR's oath of offices were recorded, and you can tell from listening to him that the presidency was slowly killing him. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, just the weight of the office. It's a bit much. It's a bit much, frankly. They didn't... This thing is not structured with the idea of nuclear bombs and shit in mind, man. The structure of the American system of governance is actually quite fragile. It's actually quite fragile, and it's very believable to me. Just how the Nazis in Ukraine don't listen to Zelensky and they just do what they want. Well, similarly, what, you think the military-industrial complex really takes? How seriously do you really think these guys are taking Congress and the Senate and the presidency seriously? Really? Seems to me like the military basically just does what it wants. And if it needs to respond to civil uprising or civil kind of thing, it will on a kind of case-by-case basis. But ultimately, it's just kind of a machine that runs itself at this point. And that realization alone, if you really were a president that went into office believing hope and change and I can do things, you're going to age really fast, because you're going to realize pretty quickly how little power you actually have. Whereas someone like Donald Trump didn't age at all and hasn't aged at all, outside of the fact that he's getting older in the first place. Because he doesn't actually care. None of it matters to him. His ambition was to be the president. That's it. And I mean, and Biden is very similar to Trump in this regard. Like Biden doesn't care. Like they probably don't even tell him anything. Honestly, like he probably goes and lies down and has a sleep. And when they need him to sign something for posterity's sake, he goes and signs it. Doesn't really ask what he's signing really. Like, and then he reads what they put in front of him. Right? But Biden's out of it, man. Like Biden's, they like juice him up for his speeches. They just get him amped up on something, right? So that he can be somewhat lucid, and I do say somewhat lucid, and somewhat able to actually articulate and read what he's supposed to read. I genuinely don't think Biden knows what's happening anymore. Like really, on a day by day, I just don't think he knows what's going on. And that's and again, like I don't say that to make fun of him. Like that's one thing that I always like when I get at the end of that critique of Biden. Like he's just an old man, and what happens when you get old, right? You dementia exists. You lose the capacity to connect to these real sort of tangible things, and that has happened to him. And that's not to make fun of the elderly or make fun of people who go down that route. That's just real. Like that's just all it is, you know. And I don't know why we're supposed to pretend like something else is going on. Yeah, everything radical is defanged and co-opted by the liberal corporate establishment. Recuperation is how all emerging leftist movements in the West have been squashed so far. Yeah. Crypto is the most fictitious. Yeah, no kidding, dude. The NFT market? Are you kidding me? It's hilarious to me how people don't see this as the final culmination of the absurdity of capitalist financialization in a dying system. I mean, for God's sakes, crypto markets, like literally they take in the same amount of energy as like entire countries. Like the country of Argentina is the amount of power generation that the NFT market requires. Like it's a retreat into fantasy on the highest level. Even if we don't consider the inflation for a second, living under poverty wage is considered $19K in Canada, and US is $26K. Yet here the average rent is about $1,200 a month across Canada. Yeah, I mean, rent control is where we got to be getting to. Like rent control and like actual like the rents are an abomination. The rents are insane. Like people are spending like half of their wage on rent. Like that's unacceptable, by any position. Like landlords don't produce anything valuable. They are parasites in the system. And you can like, if you want to really maintain the landlording system and keep these parasites doing what they're doing, well, then the rent should be much lower, right? They're not actually providing a service. They're ticket scalpers. Like this idea that we're supposed to tolerate them at all is astounding to me. I argue the U.S. military is actually privatized, which means the people who really own the U.S. military are the same people who own Congress. Yeah, like Disney Corporation, for example. Well, it really is like BlackRock and Vanguard, right? Like these two organizations, like BlackRock is responsible for something like 70% of all investing that happens in America, and Vanguard is responsible for like 28%, with like the remaining 2% being smattered throughout like little tiny people who don't even matter. And when you actually look at who owns Blackguard and who owns BlackRock rather and Vanguard, it's the same people, right? They all own the stocks. They all share the same stocks. So like, the same people own all of the stuff. Everything that exists in America is owned by the same small group of people, right? That's why it's an oligarchy, and that's why our media sucks so bad, and why we can't actually produce like really basic stuff like a Superman story, right? Because all of our actual artists are chased out in favor of like a banal, incestuous, bullshit, like tepid ideology that they refuse to even present and defend. If the Pentagon actually did Washington's bidding, then NATO would already be in Ukraine. They are clearly the ones putting the brakes on the whole situation to keep it from spiraling under control. If the Pentagon actually did Washington's bidding, then NATO would already be in Ukraine. I don't know if that's actually true. I do think that all of these forces, like, if you ask me what this is all about, Transylvanian, it isn't about a larger war with Russia or some kind of big explosive thing. at the end of the day, it really was about getting Europe to stay within America's sphere of influence, right? That China has become the major trading partner with most of the members of the EU. And notable exceptions are Germany and Italy, but that was starting to no longer be the case. Like China was starting to really catch up, and you start to look at like the EU as an organization that is majority trading partner with China. Well, these guys could start to pivot towards China and start to have more preference towards China, right? That fucks over the United States in very, very large ways, right? They really lose like their primary allies. The wealthiest nations in the world are starting to pivot towards any other country. And so I think that they did all of this in this region here in order to provoke Moscow, which the current head of the CIA, William Burns, actually wrote this when he was the ambassador to Russia. I could literally show you the document. He said that what we were doing in Ukraine was going to lead to a war. And instead of doing anything to prevent it, we threw more gas on that fire and we moved down. And I think it really was that the death cult understands that they needed Putin to invade. They needed Putin to cross the line so that they could make the stink they're making about it now, get the sanctions that they wanted to, right? And get the sanctions that they wanted to, and then keep Europe under its wing, right? Keep China at arm's length, keep it away, form the lines, right? Form the lines to keep Europe on side, to keep Australia on side, right? And hopefully continue fighting this battle against China with these allies on side. And Eric's asking for the document, as always. Thank you, sir. Let's go to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks. It is called... I don't know why it's Niet means Niet is the name of the document. There you go. And so, yep, Climate Town's really, really sharp, if you ask me. He's demonstrating how oil and gas is using this crisis as a way to increase production and deregulation, of course. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And, like, it's all very short-sighted, if you ask me. Like, what the Americans are doing and how they are operating on the world stage is indicative of their ideology. Their core ideology is let the market decide, which is not that much different from saying let chaos reign. And so this means that they aren't really good at planning, right? They don't really plan that far in advance. And if they do plan, I'm not convinced it will stick long term. Yeah, but this is exactly what I'm talking about, Transylvania. They don't think long term. Like, these guys think in, like, annual cycles. Like, while China is thinking in 100-year cycles, they're thinking, like, they're not even thinking about what's going to happen next year. Like, really. They look at, like, the business cycle as all we have to pay attention to. And that's how they act. That's how they operate. That's how they talk. That's the position they defend. Right? That this is what will bring order to our society. The great invisible hand of the free market will decide and bestow goodness upon all of us. Praise be to the invisible hand. Like, it might as well be at that point. Let chaos reign. Let chaos decide. And at some point, this conflict will be over, and Europe will gravitate back towards Asia again, since that's where the rising economic power is. Yeah, Like, look, if America was capable of planning and capable of getting a brain in their head, right, and actually thinking about, okay, what could we actually do to actually position ourselves to actually get into a better position? Well, you know what they could do? They could start producing something, right? They could start creating something of value, right? They could start actually focusing on, like, hey, we should make something that people want, right? We should make something that people want to have access to, and create that and provide it, right? Uh, because that's what the Chinese have done, right? That's the backbone of the Chinese economy. They make everything, right? They make everything for the world. And we just kind of let them do that. And we're just like, yeah, China will make it, and then we will have it, and it will be good. And it's like, yeah, now they're the superpower, dude. Like, congratulations. Like, America makes its own enemies all the time, constantly, because they lack the capacity to plan anything, right? And their ideology is hysterics. Like, literally manifest destiny. Seriously, we're the greatest people because God said so. Like, you're insane. By definition, you're living in this, like, insano crazy world where manifest destiny and the end of history and all this kind of crazy ideological nonsense that is absolutely blowing up in their faces. Like, it's absolutely blowing up in their faces in big and significant ways. And so they don't know what to do about it. And the only thing they have been doing this whole time is war. And so what tool are they reaching for, right? It's like, if you have a hammer, well, then everything looks like a nail, right? And so they're just doing war because it's all they know how to do. They don't know how to do anything else. They don't understand that, like, they could just chill the fuck out. They could use the 50% of their fucking budget to build manufacturing plants and start producing stuff that people like, and they could start funding research and development programs and start actually doing all this kind of stuff. But they're not going to do that, right? Because we're not being driven by a rational position that what we have is a religious ideology. Hey, New Perspective, how you doing, bud? What we have is a religious ideology that we have been pretending is an economic system. And that's neoliberalism. And now it's just obvious. Like, now it's just getting obvious, right? And it's getting to be undeniable. And there aren't that many voices who are willing to call it for what it is. But, like, trickle-down economics or neoliberalism or whatever name you want to give it at this point, like, it's been so thoroughly discredited as an actual economic system that to call it an economic system at this point is itself a form of propaganda. Like, it is a religious ideology that, like, you don't really need to look at much deeper evidence than the existence of business schools, right? Like, why would you create business schools if economy classes were doing the job? Well, you need to create business schools because the capitalists still need people who know what economics actually is, right? And so you teach them economics to a certain degree, how to run a business, how to interact with the economy, but you don't give them a meta visual of what is actually going on, so that they understand that there's a bourgeoisie and a proletariat, right? Like, you don't give them that perspective. You just teach them how to run your businesses for you, right? And the people who do the best in the business school, you hire to be your CEOs and managers, right? And well, why can't you do that with the economics courses? Why can't you do that? Like, Harvard teaches economics. All these people, they teach economics. Why can't you do any of that? Well, because it's a religious ideology that isn't actually valuable to the capitalists outside of the propaganda that it provides. So it's a religious ideology. And like, if you were a historian looking at this time period, you'd be like, yeah, so there's the cult of neoliberalism. For me, here in Germany, it looks like the U.S. is attempting to cause capital flight out of Europe towards the U.S., which I've already seen supported by statistics, and turn us into a neo-colony. Yeah. I mean, of course, the United States. That's all the United States knows how to do. It doesn't know how to do anything else. Like it wants everybody, and it says so. Like, this is what's so baffling about this. Like, it's very open about this. It thinks that it owns the world. Like, post World War II, it said, America and her allies are the first world. So this is the first world, owned by who? America, of course. Russia, you can be the second world. So Russia gets to be Russia, second world. We won't mess with you, you don't mess with us. And then the third world, and Russia, you better remember this, the third world is the rest of the world, which we, America, not her allies, specifically America, own. Like, that's the American position. And, like, it has always been the case. And so if America wants to turn, Germany and France and the UK and Spain and all these places into neo-colonies, let's just right in line with them. That's how they've always acted. We're just, like, not liking it as it's happening. I forgot to do the number draw today, Mocked. I forgot to do the number draw. You called me out on it. Should we close on it? Let's close on it. Let's just close on it. For those of you who have not yet done this, this is David Lynch drawing a ball, 1 to 10. You got to pick a number.
Here we go. Today's number.
He hasn't picked a 10.
March 14.
It's driving me crazy.
2022.
He's got to pick the 10, right?
10 balls.
10 balls.
Each ball has a number.
Here we go. Got 7, we got an 8, we got a 2, we got a 4.
Swirl the numbers.
Swirl the numbers. DJ, how you doing, bud?
Pick a number.
Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Today's number is
3. Wiffle. Oh, man. Get fucked, Canadian commie. Get fucked. No David Lynch magic for any of us. No magic for any of us. Oh well, such is life, isn't it? All right, guys. Well, that's a fun way to end the show. I've never ended the show with the number draw. I usually begin it. I just didn't do it today. But here we go. We made it to the end. Always remember, guys, you are a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaire class is spending hundreds of billions of dollars to make you never realize it. So you'll just stay the good little commodity you're supposed to be. Rebel, revolt, repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.